Karen, are we okay? Good evening. I'm going to call the council meeting to order this evening and recognize Councilmember Bumparati for our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Look back and have a heart for those who are going through devastating times in Florida. Lord, you spared us here on the East Coast, but we can't forget about those who are doing tough times in Florida. We ask that you pray for them, wrap your loving arms around them, and show us the compassion to reach out and show mercy and grace upon them. Lord, bless this meeting as we do the people's business. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and I don't believe we have any oath of office this evening, so thank you. Obviously, I'm not Christy Cox. We do want to remember her and her family in our thoughts and prayers this evening as well. She had a loss in her family over the weekend, and they had services today, and that's why Christy's not here. Normally, she would be here for everything pretty much, so y'all bear with me as I figure out how to operate this gavel and run the meeting, which I haven't done in 8 years almost. So, next is our public forum session, and this is where you've signed up and you get 2 minutes to speak. Now, several of you, I believe, signed up because of a public hearing that's going on in your area. If you wait to speak during the public hearing, you get to speak as long as you want. You're not limited to the 2 minutes. So when I call your name, if you're here for one of the public hearings, you can just tell us that, and then I'll skip you, and you can speak during the public hearing without us having the 2 minute limit on you. Now, once I start, if you do speak during this public forum, you'll see on the two boards up at the top, there's a 2 minute timer. That will start when you start speaking, and then once your 2 minutes are up, it'll start blinking. And we ask that you do watch for that and stop your comments at that time. Otherwise, I have to be rude and interrupt you, which is not something we like to do from up here, but we do have the 2 minute limit on that. The other thing is, when you do come to the podium, please be sure to state your name and your address for the records. And then you can say what you got to say. So I will start. Our first person is Jim Bradford.
I'm Jim Bradford. I live at 12 Wright Avenue here in York. I'm a retired lawyer, and I am coming before you as a former member of the City Council. And while I was on council, we approved 1,500 new single-family dwellings in subdivisions for York, and since I have left, I think we're up to 2,500 single-family dwellings that have been approved. We needed the housing, the growth in York, and I think we knew, though, at the time we made this decision, and we were certainly talking with the school district about what this would mean for them. They're going to need new classrooms and probably new schools for the many new children that will be coming to that district over the next several years as those subdivisions get built out. So I'm here to urge you on first reading, this before you tonight, to go ahead and approve the impact fee request that York School District 1's board has given you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Kyle Eller.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Eller. Live at 324 Redberry Court. I'd like to start with some recent events and social media interactions. My attorney has actually advised me to say the opinions expressed here are my own and not necessarily those of Clover School District, the Clover School Board of Trustees, or anybody connected to those entities. I'd like to talk about impact fees. I know we're in a period of hyper growth. I know we have opportunities with these impact fees to address this growth. We're in unprecedented times, and this is an opportunity for us to create some breathing room for a long-term plan. Where I sit right now, I think the council's 0 for 2 on impact fees. Fort Mill School District has an opportunity to provide major tax reprieve to their citizens, and they're now battling a lawsuit with the county. I know that that's still ongoing. I do hope that there's something that can happen from that, some positive that can come from that. Clover School District had an undercut impact fee without any additional data. No one knew it was coming. And we've even had some admittance that that impact fee is admittedly too low. Third-party consultants have come in, one of the best in the nation, and with that data was even confirmed by your own consultant that that data is good. We have very limited options for funding for school construction with the impact fees as updated in 2016 by the State Supreme Court and State General Assembly. We might have other long-term plans in place down the pipeline, and they're great. However, we have a need now, and we need to address that need now. And we need to make this happen for our community, for our taxpayers, and for our citizens, and for our children. We've had not one but two professionals provide good data, good analysis, and if we don't listen to them, then we have to consider ourselves fools. You have an opportunity to go 1 for 3, and I think it's time to support our schools. I support Fort Mill School District's impact fees. I support Clover School District's impact fees. And for tonight, on first reading, I support York School District's impact fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pam Holland. Okay. Darren Nichols. All right, thank you. Linda Christopher. All right. Ken Vern. Didn't get an address or anything on this one, but it starts with an H, looks like HY, maybe something, but Johnson. Okay. I'm probably gonna butcher this one, but Rose Chmolsky. Okay. Robert or Carlene Haley. Kenneth Jackson. Okay. Billy Jackson. John P.O. or P-A-O-L. Paolos. Yes, sir.
My name's John Paoloka, and I live at 3034 Ranger Road. And what we are asking for is we reside directly across the street from the property that we're trying to rezone from agriculture to RUD. Currently on Ranger Road, there are 5 agricultural lots, 14 RUD lots, and 29 RUD1 lots. What we're asking for is within the 30-year plan. We have met with zoning and folks and are keeping the standards and integrity of Ranger Road in the county. We're asking to change the zoning from agriculture to RUD. Our intent is to subdivide into 3 lots with a deeded right-of-way road, again, within the 30-year plan. Our plan is to build 1 dwelling on the 6-acre lot for myself, my significant other, and her mother, who just became a widow. And the other 2 lots, I have 2 children, 2 daughters. I may either give to them or build or sell within the community. 2 parcels. We appreciate your consideration and support, and thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next is Karen Brown.
Good evening. My name is Karen Brown. Do you need my address?
Yes, please.
127 Sunny's Way, Fort Mill. I have been involved in York County animal welfare for nearly 14 years. A lot of your faces look very familiar. I think mine does too. But we have had lots of animal welfare success in York County. Most notably, we implemented a no chaining ordinance, which is a great improvement from the old days when dogs could be chained up to a tree and a car axle or other object. But that's not why we're here today. Today we have a huge challenge in front of us. Only a week ago, the state of South Carolina had the largest dogfighting takedown in state history. 5 counties were involved, and guess what? York County was one of those 5. We're on the front page of the Charlotte Observer, not to mention we're on the news, we're all over social media, and I even got my own text message from the Humane Society of the United States to let me know this was happening in York County, if I hadn't heard it already. So, as you know, with dogfighting, that is a federal offense. And when you have dogfighting, you also have other criminal activities: guns, illicit drugs, human trafficking, prostitution, and child abuse. All of those are coming from SLED. This last case, a week ago, there were 305 confiscated during the seize, and 80 came from our county. All of them from the infamous Wildcat Creek Road area, which we all know about is known for dogfighting. So there is no surprise. So we have 80 in 2022. Then in 21, we had the 80 dogs that were seized from West Liberty Street in York. And all of those were taken to our shelter. And once again, illicit drugs and guns were found on the property. Then in 2019, we had 42 pit bulls seized from a dogfighting operation in McConnell's. Also, cocaine, weapons, and other drug violations were also found at that property. So other people will be speaking tonight, and we'll, expand on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Kelly Semino.
Good evening, my name is Kelly Semino. I'm from 1280 Paris Road, right here in Rock Hill, right there in Rock Hill, York County. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I am the Director of Chester County Animal Control. I was an animal control officer serving York County for approximately 2 years. As a concerned resident of this county, I am speaking to you tonight about animal welfare. Though it might happen behind closed doors in our pockets of our community, some of us do not visit. Dogfighting is still a reality in our area. As an animal control officer, I have witnessed multiple unaltered pit bulls in inaccurate restraint and lacking of access of water, shelter, and shade. York County ordinances would only allow us to enforce and issue citations for these violations. These dogs are not provided with basic needs and are almost always in violation of the South Carolina state mandatory rabies vaccination law. This not only poses a threat to other animals, but the public at large. These animals are made for a profit and are not considered pets. We know they do not receive proper love and care that they deserve. We know that the kind of cruelty is not only inhumane, but illegal. In my experience in the field, I can attest that investigating dogfighting leads to discovery of other criminal activity. This is not only a welfare issue, this is a community problem. As an animal control officer, I was obligated to enforce the law and hold owners accountable for their actions. But we can only do this within the constraints of the current laws. What York County needs is to be stricter legislation limiting the number of animals on the property, affecting dog breeding and fighting operations. It is time to put an end to this leniency of the law and allows dogfighting to plague our community, not only for the people of York County, but for the animals. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Alicia Swartz.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Schwartz. I am the Director of Project Safe Pet. We transport hundreds of dogs and puppies a year to partner rescues up north. In addition, we, along with Halfway There Animal Rescue, have a no-cost, low-cost spay-neuter program for pets in need. We never decline anybody. We are so thankful for the positive changes regarding humane living conditions for animals that have been made by the council members over the years that you have been in support of. The Wildcat Creek house that was just busted with the 80 dogs was caught also in 2012. I've been doing rescue for a long time, so I can remember all these things. But not only that, there were 30 dogs at that time, and sadly, 10 years later, there's 80 dogs. So they didn't really learn anything. This news article that we have here in 2012 gives a vivid description of the horror these dogs suffered through. The deputy could hear dogs yelping in the woods in pain. He sees a pit bull near the dog fighting ring with a broken leg that is severely lacerated. The other dogs have trouble walking and have wounds all over their faces. I fostered the only surviving dog from the 30, only because he was 6 months old, so he wasn't as damaged. Thankfully, he's a senior dog now, and he has a great life in Virginia. Another home that has 30 pit bulls in our county, you could actually see the dogs from the street. That's how brash these owners were. This home was in Lake Edwards Estate off of Marshall Road. Neighbors have been complaining and concerned for the dogs for years. In the FOIA reports from the complaints, the amounts of dogs differed each time, and a WCCB report was indicated that there are 22. This brave neighbor who was afraid of retaliation described to WCCB that they could hear dogs barking early in the morning, and the dogs were actually transported off the property in the middle of the night. The individual who owned all these pit bulls worked at a vet clinic, kind of like a pedophile working at a daycare. Dogfighting indicators are properties that have multiple dogs, between 5 and 100 dogs on their property. Most are pit bulls. All of the dogs are unaltered, meaning they are not spayed and neutered. They have no interest in spaying and neutering the dogs. We are hoping that you guys will look towards a future where we have limits on how many dogs a property can have of unaltered, unfixed dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominique Moreno.
Good evening. My name is Dominique Moreno. I live at 3066 Tallgrass Bluff in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I would like to thank most of you for the hard work and time that you put into making York County better. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence comes in multiple forms, including, but not limited to, physical and emotional abuse. I come here as a woman, a wife, a mother, a community frontline worker, a contributing member of this county, and a victim of domestic violence in a previous relationship. Thankfully, my children and I were able to get out safely. For those of you that don't know, Councilman Roddy falsely reported on his campaign flyer that my husband is verbally abusive.
We cannot allow, we don't call out council members. I apologize.
I won't
We're
name
not allowed,
names.
we can't respond. We don't call out council
Okay.
members.
As a woman and a former victim, I will not allow any other man to belittle me. I know who I am and what my worth is. I too hold degrees. My husband and I respect and love each other. I would not be standing here if slanderous accusations were true. You should know firsthand what the significant others of candidates go through. Even prior to this, we have been harassed by said person, by allowing rioters and protesters to his property where they were arrested for harassment, and who are also running for school board of Rock Hill. Where is the accountability? There is not transparency, which you respect and want. You have been in council for 12 years, and what you have done is not respectable.
Please, I'm gonna have to ask you to stop if you can't.
There are women who are victims of domestic abuse every day, and for that to be used as a campaign gain is despicable. Per the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, on a single day in 2020 in South Carolina, violence program served 620 victims of domestic violence. Instead of continued slander, focus should be put on the good that you want to bring to this community, not the division you want. What are we going to do to better these numbers?
Your time's up. I'm gonna have to stop you there. I apologize. Time's up. It's 2 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Sarah Levens.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Levens, and I reside at 660 Sunset Point Drive in Rock Hill. I am the founder of Halfway There Animal Rescue, a Rock Hill-based animal rescue dedicated to assisting our local shelters and reducing euthanasia rates, and also dedicated to funding a nonprofit organization that funds free spay-neuter for our community. I'm also a mother, and I am a school psychologist with Rock Hill School District. I am passionate about bettering the conditions for animals in our county, and I'm confident that through collaboration we can do exactly that. Since my fellow animal rescuers have already covered some very important topics, I'd like to spend my time speaking about logical solutions that will drive out dog fighters in our community. Dogfighting is a federal offense, like we already discussed tonight, but it's really a local problem. We are not talking about a petty crime here, nor a crime that's committed in isolation. We know that fighting matches nearly always are accompanied by drug use, trafficking of drugs and humans, prostitution, and illegal gun use and possession. Our county needs to care and direct more resources toward battling this dogfighting. We must implement laws to limit the number of dogs on a property, and we must have a cap on the number of unaltered animals residing on a property. Breeding is a business at $1,000 per puppy. It's a very lucrative means of generating income for many people, and this income is not taxed. Breeders currently do not hold business licenses, and they are off the radar when it comes to paying taxes. Our community is very fortunate to have a number of animal rescue groups who make it possible for any resident of York County to have their animal or their animals spayed or neutered at absolutely no cost. Through partnerships with local veterinarians, this means that a dog or cat can be spayed or neutered for free, simply by calling our spay-neuter hotline and making an appointment.
And I'm sorry, that's your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, next is Jonathan Moreno, and Mr. Moreno, I'm gonna ask you to please do not direct any comments at any council members.
Oh, no, I'm
If you
not.
do, I'll have to cut you off, sir.
No, I know. Jonathan Marino, 3066 Tallgrass Bluff. What I want to bring to you guys this evening is this. Ever since this summer, I've been wearing 2 wristbands. One is Chase, the other one's Gavin. What I'm here to tell you is we're dropping the ball as county councilmen and women to not get involved and unite with the city while they fight for mental health. Mental wellness is a real thing. I appreciate and congratulate the efforts and leadership of County Councilman Guffey for standing with the city to get this going. But the school district's also moving forward into helping our youth. Where are we? Where are all of us? I see every time I come to these meetings and I go to school board meetings and city council meetings that each of you guys are passionate about one thing. But don't we all agree we need to defend our children? This child overdosed off fentanyl. Fentanyl is a real thing. And what these ladies described about dogfighting, as a former police officer, I've been to those dog pits. I've seen those cadavers. I've seen what they do to bait dogs, how they rip their legs, they starve them, they beat them, they put gasoline on them, they kill them, they butcher them, they put them in the woods and hope nobody finds the body. We have dump sites in District 4, Industrial Drive, Wildcat Creek, Squire Road, Ogden Road. When I came here in 2011, the worst drug was crack cocaine. There was no homelessness in the intersections, nobody panhandling. Now we have homelessness, now we have fentanyl, now we have heroin, now we have meth. But we've had dog fighting. And the saddest thing is when these dogs go into the shelters, guess what? We have to make plea deals with the suspects to release those animals. These are innocent animals just like our children, but they're falling to these drugs, they're falling to these crimes, and if you don't step up, it's shameful for you to sit there and not be a leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Karazi. You can give them to Miss Brogdon and she'll get them to us.
I am from Cherryville, North Carolina, but I am a former employee of York County. I worked at the animal shelter for 9 years, which I had to resign due to the stress, how the stress affected me physically and mentally. My question to you is, what is it going to take for this legislative body to institute decisive laws around animal abuse in this county? How bad does it have to get? Have you ever seen a dog, a bait dog? I sent pictures around so you can see. During a previous incident at Wildcat Creek, the dogs rescued were so abused that not only were they emaciated, but also physical injuries such as their jaws hanging from their face, ears ripped off, as well as multiple gashes and bite wounds, to name a few. People have to be completely heartless and mentally unstable to be able to engage in dog fighting. Would you want these people as your neighbors? Where you have dog fighting, you almost always have criminal activity. To add to the animal abuse, when these animals come into the shelter, it is a burden to try and place these dogs. There are only so many kennels, which are usually full with other unwanted animals. And fight dogs can only be placed one per kennel, which can quickly overflow a shelter. So where are they supposed to place them? During previous bus, we had to euthanize good dogs because of space. Then we had to hold those dogs for months, awaiting court decisions. We fed and cared for these animals on a daily basis. Then the court decision came down where the animals that now trusted us and we had bonded with were to be euthanized. Imagine the way it feels holding the dogs as they're licking you with their tails wagging as you put them to their death. If you don't make a change and implement laws to change this, I feel you are complicit with the problem. Meet with Animal Rescue and come to decisions. The new laws could encompass the following: licensure, which would, where people with unaltered animals pay more than those with unaltered. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Nathaniel Shell.
Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Shell, 1843 Ebenezer Road, Rock Hill, South Carolina. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for giving me the opportunity to address council this evening. I'm here on my behalf because I was just sitting here listening to us pledge allegiance to the flag, and we said justice for all. Well, for that situation, it hasn't been happening to me for the past 3 years. I had a court situation here at York County, and I also hired this expensive attorney to appeal my case. I got a letter from him yesterday, said the Supreme Court denied my case. So I made leaflets, my case, so I could leave them here so she can let each one of you see these cases, because I feel that I did everything I can do to get justice, yet the court here in York and the appellate court denied me, and I'm trying to figure out why. They don't give me a reason, just say denied. So if you guys can write a letter to these courts on my behalf, I really would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and if you'll give those to Ms. Brogdon. Tony Messiah. Oh, okay. Thank you. We had quite a few people do that, and that's why we're calling more names than usual tonight. Michael Pruner.
Good evening. Michael Pruner, 841 Hollis Lakes Road, Rock Hill. I'm here to speak to you about the impact fees this evening. Might have an unpopular opinion from some of the folks, but I think if people educate themselves about impact fees, if you do it the right way, it's a great way for funding. I am the president of the York County Home Builders Association, and for the record, let me say we are pro-education and pro-funding of our schools. But what we are against is making a rushed decision based on flawed and inaccurate data. I think the Fort Mill ongoing litigation should prove we need to slow down and do this right. I know you just received the packet on Thursday, and you're going to have to make a vote tonight. That's pretty quick to go through all that data, and a hurricane on Friday. The concerns that I have with the study is the data. There was a secondary consultant hired to see if the study was legal, not if the data was correct. So the study shows 5,545 students this current year in the school district. Yet the school district reports to the State Department of Education on the State Department's website 500 and some students less. So which is the right number? Is it the number that was done as a projection, or do we take an actual number to figure those things out? One other part about the study says to look at figure 10 of the study, and it says without additional seats, York School District 1 intermediate and middle schools will be at 99% of their capacity at the end of 10 years. So we're looking 10 years out on money you have to spend within 3 years of collecting it by state law. So how can we look that far out? We're going to be in another Fort Mill situation here if we're not careful. Home affordability. The study says you can buy a home in York County for $160,000. That's the median home. That's not the high, that's not the low. I think that needs to be looked at as well.
And thank you, Mr. Pruner. And I will say there will be a public hearing for this where you'll be able to come back and speak more if you would like. So, Nate Negrin and Vanessa Arcela. All right, thank you. All right, that takes care of that. So next is consent agenda. Is there a motion on consent?
Move to approve consent agenda.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent passes. Now we will move into some of our public hearings for those of you who decided to wait till later. Our first one is rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 22-16, tax map number 726000087, a portion to rezone from RMX 20 to NC and LI 1. And I believe.
Good evening,
Mr.
Council.
Bueno's- There you are, over here now. Okay, thank you. I knew I saw you earlier. I'm like, where'd he go?
Where'd he go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this application, it does cover just a single parcel, but as you'll see on the aerial map here, it is split by the Norfolk Rail Line there, Norfolk Southern Rail Line. And it covers a good portion of the former Regent Park Golf Course. The area of the application is actually to the southwest in blue there, covering approximately 7 acres of the overall 52.5 acres. And the request is to go from RMX 20 and a sliver of RMX 20 and all of the NC. This is a split zone parcel to go to LI. So the applicant is seeking to relocate an existing glazing contractor business to a new building on this site. So this is a sketch site plan of their proposal. Here is a conceptual rendering of what their building is proposed to look like. And I did want to mention this application was a little bit delayed because currently the code definition for construction services would capture their proposed glazing contractor service use. That would force the applicant to apply for the ID zoning district. As part of the Recode Batch 2 amendments that are also on the agenda for this evening, staff included an additional definition that separates out the more specialized contractor operations that have smaller outdoor footprints to the trade services use. And that would allow this applicant to establish their glazing operation under the light industrial category that they are applying for. The applicant is aware if that text amendment is not adopted that they would have to come back before you all and request an ID district. So here's that conceptual site plan overlaid over the surrounding area. You can see on the west side of the tracks, it's primarily single-family residential, some single-family attached there as well. On the east side of the tracks, there's some vehicle storage and apartments. So this is the zoning map for the area. You can see that portion of the property is zoned neighborhood commercial currently. The applicant is proposing to rezone all of that, and then a portion of the RMX 20 that's on the site, so they can expand and have an access area there. the surrounding area is primarily that same RMX 20 district. On the west side and on the east side, there's a mix of office and institutional and planned development. Comprehensive plan for the area calls for neighborhood residential in all of this area of Regent Park. And for that reason, staff is recommending denial of this rezoning application. The neighborhood residential future land use designation does allow for some non-residential uses, but it calls for them to be located at the intersection of major roads and to be neighborhood serving, neither of which is the case for this particular application. However, by a vote of 7-0, the Planning Commission does recommend approval with a pair of conditions. One being that they subdivide the property to match the zoning district lines within 90 days of rezoning approval. And second being that with the exception of any contradictions to building and zoning code requirements, the development must be substantially consistent with the conceptual rendering and conceptual site plan provided with the rezoning application.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? All right. Okay.
So we're starting to see more petitions or applications come through where staff says yes, planning commission says no, or planning commission says yes, staff says no, whatever you have. And you've been a part of the staff and the group that says no. What are some of the staff's reservations about this approval?
So we do have, and it's a long-standing scenario that we do have differing recommendations between staff and planning commission. It's not necessarily a recent trend. It's not entirely common, as you'll see through most of the rezonings tonight. We're on the same page, the planning commission and staff, but we do differ from time to time. Staff's recommendation is always based on what the comprehensive plan recommends. That's our duty, that's our function.
I want to put a pin right there because so many times we hear that referred to as if it's the gospel, as if it's the Bible, and we all know that's not the case. And it's a good reference point, but that shouldn't be the number one reason staff doesn't feel like a certain plan or a certain option should be made available. So, but I'll let you continue. I want to put a pin right there on that one.
Sure. And I'll say that while we do very often recommend what the plan recommends, that's why the county has a comprehensive plan. That's why the state requires that we have one, is so that we can guide our land use decisions. However, if we have scenarios where there is a long-standing use that is non-conforming and the proposal improves the site, but it doesn't necessarily match the comprehensive plan. We've had several of those over the last couple of years. That the rezoning, the requested district does not match what's recommended in the plan, but staff does recommend approval in those scenarios as well.
And one more quick question. How do you feel about the conditions that the planning commission suggested? What is your
Yeah, and I'll state that frequently when staff reviews applications and we do recommend denial, we understand that certain scenarios, planning commission might recommend different, council might adopt differently, so we do sometimes recommend conditions of approval even if we are recommending denial, and that's the scenario here. These are both staff recommended conditions in the event that council decides to move forward with approving the application.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, real quick. First of all, Jonathan, thank you for this update here. Couple of quick questions. When it states here that must be subdivided so no more than one zoning district is applied to the parcel, let me ask you, I've met with the owner of that property, and they've been I feel, a very good partner with us in regards to looking to extend the trails for, what do you call it? Anyways, yeah, there's an extension of the trails that they partnered with York County on, where we did a site visit on. We actually met out there about 1.5 years ago. So with that change, though, how does that affect the existing property that's left here outside of this one property?
So with the condition, it's really asking the applicant to just subdivide out their proposed LI property, because they are, currently the property is split zoned, so that condition is looking to eliminate that split zoning. so that the portion of the property that's intended for this light industrial use would be entirely light industrial, and the remainder of the property would remain in its current district at RMX 20. And either of those districts wouldn't impact the ability to connect to that trail.
Okay, very good. Just a quick statement, you know, in meeting with the landowner, he was very good about partnering to complete out the extension of that trail. I think he's a good partner for the area, and I think he's going to help to protect a lot of the land that's there already. So again, yeah, just share, yeah, yeah.
Anything else, any more questions? All right, then, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this rezoning? If so, remember, if you want to speak, just come up, state your name, address, and tell us what you want us to hear. We will not respond. We cannot respond. It's just an opportunity for you to tell us what your opinion is of the rezoning.
Which backs up directly behind the property. Just having lived there for the past 14 years and seeing the increase in traffic on that road, having another non-residential property in there scares me, especially with the way the traffic flows around that curved road anyhow. I just don't see a reason why that property needs to be rezoned. It was part of the old golf course, and changing that, while the property owner bought that property hoping to do something with it, having it rezoned and changing it from residential to commercial, I think is a bad idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak against? Anyone in favor?
My name is Andy Lytle, 517 Cuxhaven Court in Regent Park. I'm the owner of said property. It's Carolina Thread Trails, by the way. We want to make it a public park. So God spoke to me a few times in my life about this property. I didn't know what it was at the time, but at the time the opportunity came to buy it, with permission from my wife, we proceeded to get a mortgage on the property, not knowing, you know, exactly how we were going to pay for it, but knew that it was something we were supposed to do. So the plan is to make the most minimal impact to the neighborhood, but be able to pay the mortgage. So the property already has a split zoning. We actually don't need as much space as the map shows, but the county wanted me to go ahead and rezone the part that was already zoned for neighborhood commercial and just incorporate all that for now, just to clean up the split zoning. So now we subdivide it, and we're only talking about the corner piece of the property. The rest is to be preserved. I've spoken to most of my neighbors. There was a lot of concern in the beginning. But the way it's zoned now, I could put a shopping center there that does serve the neighborhood. That would be neighborhood commercial. My son and I pick up litter in the neighborhood, and we pick up an awful lot of litter at the shopping center in the front of the neighborhood. So I felt like moving my business there, we won't be cleaning up a mess because we won't be making a mess. We have 5 trucks, less than 20 employees, so I don't see traffic being an issue when you compare it to putting a little shopping center there that would invite traffic for retail businesses to survive. So I feel like we're doing the most minimal impact to the neighborhood, and our goal is to preserve the property. So the metal building that's on the property already sort of undisturbed it. There's construction already there. There's an ugly metal building. We want to improve that and put our business there so that we can afford to conserve the rest of the property. That's the purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor?
Second.
A motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Public hearing is closed. We need a new motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just kind of piggyback on what I mentioned earlier. I had an opportunity to be out there. Thank you for the name of the trail, Carolina Thread Trails, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spot back there, connecting onto the trails, allowing for Regent Park and the residents there to really enjoy being out in the woods and in just the area itself. Regent Park took a lot of impact from townhomes being put in there a few years ago, and this is a great, I think, partnership with the resident that's there to take the existing building that's there, again, improving it, putting in a very low-impact business, at the same time protecting that property that's there. And I know the residents of Regent Park would be, very happy to know that and know that it will be protected for the future too. So I will be supporting it tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Roddy?
I just want to say I want to commend the gentleman for having a heart to consider utilizing the land that he wasn't going to use to make it part of a walking trail and another amenity for the area. A lot of times people come in and they want to develop land all the way out to as far as they can get it and say, well, if I can get it in here, if it'll fit, I'm going to do it. But we do need those philanthropy type efforts to be a part of some development in our county, so we appreciate that.
All right, and just for clarification, though that motion was with the recommended conditions, or okay, and the second was okay with that?
Yep.
All right. So, any other comments?
Yeah. Well, the property itself, you said that they're recommending to rezone the entire property to LI. Is that correct?
No, it's just a 7-acre portion of the 52.5.
Okay, just
so you
a small
see that,
section.
yeah,
Okay.
outline there.
All right, never mind. That clears up. I was wondering why the entire property was getting rezoned. Thank you.
All right. If no other comments, all in favor of the motion with the conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right, next is rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 2211, tax map 6170000, 001, 026, 077, 084, 085, 086, and 087. And this is a major PD amendment.
Yeah, so this application for a PD amendment is for a site on Lazy Hawk Road. The overall size of the district is about 179 acres. So just a little more background information on that district. It was originally approved back in 1998. It allows very specific office and industrial uses. And to date, only Caterpillar sales has been developed on that site. It's been amended twice before. Once in 2016 to increase the height from 35 feet to 50 feet, and once last year to amend to clarify the meaning of notes on loading docks and use separation. The applicant tonight is requesting to modify the existing PD in two ways. The first is to increase the maximum building height to 60 feet. And I will mention that staff and the applicant might have had some miscommunication on that. It is their intent to ask that height increase to be applied only to the districts in which the applicant owns, not the entire district. So that is certainly something that council can limit to just those properties under the ownership of the applicant and not the entire district. I will also mention that the base industrial development district, so ID, does allow 60 feet in height. So this would be keeping with that industrial designation. Modification 2, their second request is to allow loading docks to face Lazy Hawk and Interstate 77. So county ordinance prohibits loading docks from being oriented towards arterial roads. So they are looking to modify that provision specifically for this planned development district. Inside of those existing standards for the district, it states that in no case shall lots orient loading docks facing the perimeter property lines of the Crosswind subdivision, the Nichols property, or the Haley property. So that's all of those exterior properties that are along the west and the north. So there's really a limiting factor to where a warehouse might orient their loading docks, and a warehouse is an allowed use in this district. So this is a sketch site plan of the applicant's proposal for a cold storage facility. So you can see the layout here and having those loading docks orient towards 77. This is a rendering from the applicant team of what that facility would look like. I'm sure the applicant will go into more detail about what their operations look like for the site. So you can see those loading docks there. This is a line of sight section analysis done by the applicant as well. And this is to demonstrate that there are existing vegetation and elevation differences that would obscure the view of this facility even with the height increase from I-77, so they just wanted to point that out. These changes are consistent with the comp plan and the intent of this particular district, so staff recommends approval of those two requests, and by an 8-0 vote, the Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Jonathan? I'll state, while you're thinking about that, I did speak with Christy Cox, and this is in her area, and she told me that she has some questions about it still and some minor reservations, but she does support getting it through a first reading tonight to give time for those things to be addressed and for things to, you know, the applicant to have time to meet and her questions to be answered and that type of thing, so. Any other questions for staff? All right, then I will open it up. Anyone want to speak against this rezoning? Just come up and state your name, address, and tell us what you want us to hear.
My name is Harry Johnson. I live at 3591 Enterprise Drive, Rock Hill, South Carolina, and it's nice to see all of you again. I'm a member of the community group that worked with Kerwood Chapel and Joe Blanchard in 1998 on the original PD. And it looks like we're getting away from the initial intent of the PD. And that initial intent was to work with the developers, yet protect the surrounding property owners. In 1998, we all agreed on 35-foot building height. Then in 2016, it went to 50 feet. Now it's asking to go to 60 feet. That's a 71% increase from the initial height of 35 feet. That's kind of like going to buy a new car and the dealer tells you that the car is $35,000. And then 2 days later, when you go to buy it, he says, no, it's 60 grand. Well, that's just wrong, and you're not going to buy that car. And that's kind of what's happening to this PD. And I know, as was just described, Karis is saying that they just want the 60 feet height for their parcel. And they're at low grade, and they're by the interstate, and it won't be any impact, any major impact to any of the local property owners. But that seems kind of questionable. Can you severance out one parcel from the PD and not change the entire PD? And then even if you can, does that not set a precedent for anybody else who wants to move in on maybe a high grade with heavy industrial lighting, and that customer is right near a property line? How can you not give that purchaser the right to go 60 feet if you've already set precedent to Karis at 60 feet on the same PD? That's what's questionable to me. The other area of concern that hasn't been brought up is the designated trailer parking areas. These are not listed as loading docks, but for all intents and purposes, they are loading docks. There'll be continuous jockeying of the trailers at all times of the day. There'll be lighting, there'll be noise. And to me, it just seems like a very clever way to get around the amendment of loading docks not facing the surrounding property owners. So in summation, in summary, what looks like as a couple of fairly benign requests or really large deviations that stray from the original intent of the PD, which was protecting the property owners. So I think there needs to be significant dialogue between all parties before this progresses. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak against?
Good evening. My name is Robert Haley. I live at 3425 Marshall Road. I have my home on 30 acres adjacent to the property in question, and my name is on their request to have these changes made. Like Mr. Johnson, Darren Nichols, Donnie Christopher, and myself met with Joe Blanchard in 1998 to help develop the existing PUD. With the assistance of then County Councilman Kerwood Chapel. We allowed for the development of Joe Blanchard's Caterpillar business there, also allowing him to further develop the existing property for future business. We realized that that is an essential part of growth within the county. Since that time, we've been before this council on numerous occasions with similar requests to deviate from the original PD. As we've all been told, 5 years ago, approximately 5 years ago, we went from 35 feet to 50 feet. Here we are again, 5, 6 years later, with another request to raise it to 60 feet. In 1998, there were approximately 20 homes that were adjacent to this existing area. Today, there are in excess of 60, with more being built. No change has ever been requested to this PD that does anything to increase the value of existing property owners. No change has ever been requested to improve the living conditions or the quality of life of any existing surrounding property owners. So we respectfully request that you deny this request tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else against?
My name is Joe Howell, 2376 Westbrook Road. My mom lives at 2251 Mount Holly Road, which is directly across from Lazy Hawk. Lazy Hawk is at an angle. The trucks that come out from Blanchard now light the house up every day. But they're there during the early morning hours, not all day and not all night. So what you're proposing here is a constant flow of trucks. And I appeal to you to go and look at Lazy Hawk Road. It makes a hard 90-degree turn to come up on 901. There is no lanes for the interstate there. There's a red light, but there's no turn lane there. There was no turn lane for Lazy Hawk either. This is going to be a significant change in the property there and devaluation of her property, as well as mine, which I own behind her. So I just ask that you deny it for the fact that this is a PD and you've changed it twice. And that is not kosher with the state of South Carolina. Once a PD is listed, it has to be reset, and y'all amended it. That is not what the law says in state. I respectively thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Anyone else against?
My name is Linda Christopher, 2170 Strawberry Road in Rock Hill. My husband Donnie Christopher was with Harry and Robbie Haley and Kerwood and Darren Nichols when they set this PUD back in 1998. So, you know, from 1998 to 2016, 18 years, you know, they've changed it. They want to change it again. And, you know, this is just not what a PUD represents or what it should be. So we just ask that you deny this. I know if Donnie were here and could speak, he would be against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak against?
Yes, my name's Darren Nichols. Live at 2196 Strawberry Road. I'm part of the original group of 4 that met with, at the advice of Kerwood Chapel, met with Joe Blanchard and his engineer Joe Kiesler back in 1998 to discuss the PUDs and to have a good quality of life for all the citizens that lived in the area, but at the same time, promote business. I mean, I'm a pro-business guy. We have to have business in the area, but it needs to be controlled business. When Blanchard built their building there, they had no problems whatsoever with the height constrictions that they had. They have a very successful business, and I don't understand why the increased heights over the period of time. But at any rate, I met with Bill Blackwell back in 2016 when he bought some of the property that adjoined me. And going back, I have about 500 yards of linear feet or of property line that adjoins the said property. I got a fair amount of, I guess what you say, foot in the game. We had put in certain proposals in the PUD, and it was certain restrictions on the lighting, the operations of the shifts, the sizes of the buildings, the sizes of the lots. At that particular time, everything was approved, everything was done. And things have been changed over the years, and I understand that certain heights back in the past might not be what you need today. But I want y'all to consider the height. And the height, you know, we went from 35 to 50. Why are we having to go to 60? I mean, what's next? There's a lot of other houses that have moved into the area and neighbors that have spent a lot of money, and they were all under the assumption that, you know, they had protections. The biggest thing that, and I've been talking to Ben Johnson a little bit, and I'm not against Karis coming in, and they're my next door neighbor, and I've spoken to them. I do have issues with the back parking staging areas. I think that needs to be addressed. Essentially, that's another loading dock. Just want y'all to give a lot of consideration to some of the stuff that's already been out there for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak against? All right, anyone in favor?
Definitely shorter than everybody else. Gonna bring that down. Ken Verne, 4565 Pamela Court, Long Grove, Illinois. I am here on behalf of Karis. I have had the opportunity to sit with Mr. Nichols along with several other members of the council. You know, I just want to try and help address a couple of the questions. You know, first and foremost, why 60 feet? We actually asked for 58 feet. You know, 60 feet was an even number, fit in with what the current code allows for. We're designing a cold storage facility, so this is designed to hold food. So the building is designed to maintain temperatures at 10 below, up to 55 degrees, depending on the food type. We're not the operator of the building. We are just a real estate developer working with different companies that are nationwide to hopefully bring, you know, an operator to the building that will ultimately distribute food not only locally but regionally, just helping improve the food chain. Quick tidbit about food, the cold storage chain throughout the country. The average buildings are aged somewhere between 38 and 42 years old. About 75% of the population of the buildings are built before 2000. So technology has changed, the efficiencies have changed, but why we need that extra 10 feet is really driven by the users that would occupy this building, that their business model is built on maximizing the cube. And so if we go to 58 feet, it allows them to store up to 50 feet with their product. You know, the advantage to cold storage versus a traditional warehouse user is we have a fraction of the traffic. You know, we're working on a project in another market, and they're averaging, you know, probably about a third of the number of trips that a dry industrial building would generate. So we are sensitive to the traffic impact, you know, the location of Lazy Hawk to the interstate, and the immediate access to the on-ramp and off-ramp. There is currently a turn lane there that will allow the semis to safely turn onto Lazy Hawk, and then subsequently it's a right turn out and back onto the interstate. But again, the clear height is really driven by the industry and the current codes, and the fire sprinkler system, state-of-the-art system allows that as the maximum height we would want to go, and the maximum height we would intend to go. When it comes to dry industrial, and understanding that our request truly is just for our building, not for the rear site. We want, full disclosure, we want nothing to do with them. We wish them well, but that's not what we're here for. The traditional and dry industrial, I've been working in the industry for almost 20 years, isn't going to go anywhere near 60 feet. The biggest you'll hear these days are 40-foot clear buildings. So again, the 50-foot mandate for them would be perfectly fine. Realistically, they'll probably be, a little bit lower than that. So that's why our focus is just on our facility and just on that front parcel. We do sit at the front of the lot, fronting the interstate and Lazy Hawk Road. So we're not the one closest to anybody but Mr. Nichols. So we want to take that into consideration. And then one other quick tidbit is when Mr. Nichols and I met back in June, we had a bigger trailer lot on the back side of the property and had our retention pond running alongside of it. Through our design updates and trying to take his needs and concerns into consideration, we've shrunk the size of that rear trailer lot, which again is just overflow truck parking. There is no transferring loads out in the yard. The continuity of care for cold storage and the food is critical, that the trucks don't even get opened up until they're backed up into the loading dock against the building. So, and our whole goal is to keep the building as absolutely tight as possible so that the air doesn't infiltrate and doesn't infiltrate the food and the quality of food storage. So that's all. Happy to answer any questions when appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor?
Thank you, Ms. Winkler. I'm Ben Johnson. I live at 310 College Avenue in Rock Hill, and I represent Karis Cole out of Chicago with regard to this PD amendment. First of all, Karis has a major planned economic development project. They have an institutional investor. They've worked with the governor's office, Department of Commerce. In fact, this site was on the Department of Commerce website as a future potential economic business site as an established business park. The planned investment is in the range of $80 million. The proposed building is 275,000 square feet. The taxes is currently in farm use. I think taxes last year were $4,300. Once it's built, 2024 or 2025, taxes are going to go to a median amount that is the range, but the median number is 1.2 million a year. So that's 1.2 million in additional revenues. No school impact. This project doesn't bring any children to educate. So this 1.2 million goes to the bottom line of the county. Cold storage there's been a focus on this as a result of the pandemic. We can remember when we went to the grocery store and some of the meat counters were empty or nearly empty. And it had to do in part with the centralized distribution of food that needed cold storage. And the market foresaw a need to put cold storage closer to economic metropolitan areas. And so there's a need in the Charlotte market for more cold storage so that it's closer to the grocery stores and closer to us. So in a sense, this is really part of the food chain, and it's unlike other types of industries. It's something we need. We need cold food. We need it stored, and we need it near us. It might need. It might be one thing to want an Amazon facility. I hope we have one day, but as compared to needing socks on next day delivery and needing food on the next day, the food certainly is in a different category. We want to, and I'll hand to the staff, to you the application that we've submitted regarding the PD amendment. And I have the greatest respect for these neighbors. I know Darren Nichols, know the Christopher family well, and the Haleys. Part of one thing I want to emphasize, and this Jonathan did already, Mr. Vern explained the unique need that they have for their building because of the units that go on top of it to be increased by 8 feet, from 50 to 58 feet. Our request, and you'll see our request number 1, is to increase the height limit for our property only. And if we look at the parcel, our property, if you're looking at the map on the screen here, that's good, that's just fine. The one on the top right is the first piece coming in right off the exit ramp there, the first piece on the right, and that's 41 acres that our client owns, and they do own it. They closed on the purchase back in June. So I know Mr. Johnson, maybe others live in the neighborhood opposite on Enterprise Road, and undoubtedly are concerned about a change in the height. Not that they're not concerned about this parcel, but I want to make it really clear to them and to you guys, we're only seeking a height limit increase, really only need 8 feet, but staff suggested 10 feet. For our 41 acres, this is the very first parcel you come to. There are 3 small parcels, one large parcel, 40 acres, and then 2 small parcels that are in the request and listed there. It's a unique parcel. It's a unique business in the sense that it has equipment that drives the need for greater height, and that we think it's also justified by the way this site sits. It is, the building is going to be down toward the front of the site, up against Lazy Hawk and I-77, with the loading docks oriented toward I-77. That's a good depiction of it there. And as we look at, there's one more exhibit, Ms. Brogdon, one either before or behind. I'll go the other way. That went back. They went back one more. There's a line of sight exhibit. There. This property sits. Let me go back to the one with the views of the property. You go back. There we go. One more. There we go. That's it. So if you look at the photograph on the bottom right, that's coming off of 901 toward the property. You see a row of trees there on the right, and then midpoint on the property, more trees, and then on down below, more trees. With the understanding with staff and by agreement, all of those, and also by agreement with the City of Rock Hill, which is providing utilities, all of these trees are going to be kept, both on the interstate side of Lazy Hawk and on the building side of Lazy Hawk. So, plus there's a berm, and this building actually sits, if you're coming down Lazy Hawk, it goes downhill, and the building actually sits about 7 feet, maybe 8 feet below ground level where it begins. The road goes on more downhill, but part of the building actually sits below grade. So it's well hidden by the berm and the trees. And again, the neighbors, I have the greatest respect for these neighbors. Mr. Nichols' residence, our client measured it as 521 meters from his house, which is roughly 4 or 5 football fields, I believe. And we're talking about a height difference is about the height of that door jamb over there, so from several football fields away. And it's just this piece of property. The building, of course, could be built at 50 feet under the PD, but that's not this particular design. And as we said, because of the refrigeration, it doesn't work. It's our great desire to get this permitted within the county and approved within the county. The other aspect of this, and let me point out one other thing. If you look, indeed, Mr. Nichols has a good bit of property behind the facility, but the property to the going up Lazy Hawk back toward the interchange is 5 acres that he has that is zoned general commercial. There's been some, looks like maybe some grading done there by him or his neighbor. So I don't want you thinking it's all residential. That 5 acres is commercial going toward the north. The second aspect of this request has to do with the orientation of the building. We get it. We agree that the council clarified in 2021 that these loading docks should not face these neighborhoods. And the council has made it crystal clear. And so when we looked at this, the logical thing to do was to orient the loading docks toward the interstate. As Mr. Kendry can advise you, once and Ms. Dover, once a PD takes on a development standard, the PD controls over the code. And the PD here says as to how the building is supposed to face, it cannot face the neighborhoods. And so, practically speaking, legally speaking, the PD takes up the subject of where to face, and it says don't face their neighborhood. Inferably, it can face anywhere else under the PD. But your new code does say loading docks shouldn't face the interstate, and staff has asked that while we're at this, let's go ahead and clarify that in this PD, a development is allowed to face I-77 and Lazy Hawk. The staff has worked with our client on screening, and the city of Rock Hill has also approved the screening so that the loading docks basically are not going to be an issue from anyone driving down the road. And it's important for the neighbors that the loading docks not face them. I have not heard of anyone say they want the loading docks facing anywhere other than toward I-77. So we, the other thing, I don't want to take up any more time. There is some green space built in this PD around it and behind it, and I will hand out one. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. There is one more document. And all I've done there is highlight for you the open space. This is part of the PD that was negotiated by the Nichols and the Haley and the Christopher families. And of course, we're going to honor that. And there is substantial buffer already built into this PD that I've marked in green on the paper you're going to get. We appreciate your consideration, and it is, of course, we do not ask that the entire PD be changed to allow 60 feet. We do think there's an appropriate case here to allow this 58-foot building that is going to be, by the way, a great economic development project for this county. Thank you.
Anyone else in favor?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve on first reading. Any discussion?
Yeah. So on this property, you know, one of the problems that we tend to get a lot of complaints about is the city of Rock Hill annexing. For one, I'd like to seek legal clarification. If the city was to annex this property, does the PUD come into play at all? Or do they make their own rules? Okay. He said once they adopt the property, they make their own rules. Which is, you know, my parents live out this way as well, so I'm very familiar with the area. My concern is the city creeping through, and especially with what's going on down at Kettle Song, and as everything's progressing down. You've already got Porter Road going away, and I fear that if we can't get reasonable and work together to really get a good solution, I really fear that we're going to be looking at a situation where the city comes in and just annexes the property. So I would highly recommend getting together prior to second reading. Trying to think of anything else. I wrote down so much during all the traffic impact. You know, the situation that you mentioned about the headlights going into the front of your home. I'm not sure how to remedy that, if that would be a road situation or how we would have to look at that with the amount of trucks, because if trucks are leaving in the middle of the night, that's definitely going to be an issue. But that's it. And with it being first reading, we typically just go ahead and approve anyway, so that way we can have the public hearing. And once Chairwoman Cox is back, I hope that y'all will all sit down and kind of figure out what is best for the area.
Yeah, so I've got one quick question for Jonathan. The compressor units at the top of the building, was there just any discussion around the sound or the noise factor that any of these units produce?
No, staff didn't have any conversations around sound. I will just mention that the county noise ordinance applies across the board. And for industrial sites, they typically have to sign a performance standards agreement that would limit the amount of volume that leaves an industrial site.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, let's go down the line. Joel, we'll just go on
I
down
just
the line,
wanted a point of clarification. I don't mean to put our legal mind down on the spot, but Michael, the point was raised about whether we're even procedurally sound or running afoul of South Carolina law. Could you speak on that, please?
Sure. Once I heard that, I did a quick search of the statute, and we can amend the PD.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're there. And you know, voting to approve this tonight doesn't necessarily mean, at least for me, that I'm supportive of all the proposed changes and the manner in which they've been presented to us this evening. But I am a bit loath to deny it on first reading, especially when the person whose district is affected isn't here to speak one way or the other. I would hope that as we move into second reading, it sounds like there's some dialogue between you know, the owner, the developer, and the impacted properties in the surrounding area. I would hope that dialogue continues and some of the issues that y'all raised could possibly be addressed in the meantime. And we'll look forward to second reading and seeing what comes of that.
Mr. Roddy.
Real quick, I'm sure many of you sitting out there remember late last year where the city of Rock Hill was going down 901, speaking about annexing, going down Porter Road, talking about annexing. And I like the fact that Brandon asked the question, if this property was to get annexed, the PD goes away and the city comes in and sets the rules. And right now, we have it set at 50 feet. And I understand over the years, it went from, I think it said 35 feet in 98. I was here in 2016, I was here in 21, and I think some of the conversation about this entire piece of property was more so not this particular piece, but another piece that encompasses on this whole Lazy Hawk area. So I do remember some familiar faces that came, and you guys have stuck together over the years, and it's only right to stand up and protect your property. You know, no one wants to be adversely affected, even though we're a growing county. I can even remember when 901 was just 2 lanes coming down through there. So it has changed over the years. I remember getting on the bus to go play football. We went down a 2-lane road to get to 77. Now it's a 4-lane road going to 77. So obviously the area is changing, and our current code, if the PD wasn't in place right now, if this was just raw land and no one had any discussions in 98, 2016, or 21, the height requirements or the height availability would be 60 feet. And understand things have changed, and maybe in 98, 35 feet was a reasonable amount, but apparently nobody has saw fit to come in and be able to get in there to do something. Even in 2016 and 2021, with some of the adjustments made to the PD, still no one was able to move on the property to put a feasible development. Obviously, this is an investment for the company coming in. Obviously, it's a nice boost to the tax base, but we don't always do things just because it brings money to the bottom line. You know, there are several other factors that goes into place. and knowing how, and I've gotten a lesson on dry storage versus cold storage. You know, obviously cold storage needs the cubic feet to go up to stack the pallets of the food. And one of the things that definitely brought a lot of value to the conversation, even though this conversation was a couple weeks ago, you know, thinking about the hurricane that just hit in Florida. You know, where are those pressure points to get food to Florida? How far away does it have to travel? When COVID was here, our grocery shelves were empty. You know, the logistics of getting food to places to people that need it. And, you know, with this being something that can come to the area to be a central location, to be a food hub, to distribute food out, whether it's regionally, down 77, to North Carolina, South Carolina, you know, we need those type of investments into our area. But to understand the need for 60 feet over 50 feet. Like the gentleman said, they only wanted 58, but staff says 60. And if you, like you pointed out, that's a doorway, an increase of another door height. And understanding what's on grade, what's off grade, that this land sits down below grade. So if it was on grade and they were going up 10 feet, it would be probably 18 feet. But since the grade of this property sits a little lower than the area around it, it's not going to, from my personal opinion, it's not a total increase of 8 or 10 more feet because the ground sits lower. Obviously, the neighbors have had some conversation, and these conversations need to continue, but if I understand correctly, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, the only two requests is to turn the loading docks towards 77, which our code says you can't do. And the only other request is to go from 50 feet to 60 feet. So there's not 8, 9, 10 different requests. Those are the two bones of contention. Am I correct? Okay. I made several notes on here, and Joe had one answered about, are we legally able to do this? Because we don't want anybody to be under the impression that we're doing something illegal or not within the scope of what this body is charged with doing. And so, having said that, obviously it's first reading, but the only two things I think we've been asked to consider was in being more specific to just this parcel, not the entire 179 acres. I think this piece is maybe 40, 43, 44. So if anybody else wanted to come in and say, hey, we wanted to do another height increase, well, from what I've been told, typically only cold storage need more height. Warehouses are this way. Cold storage goes this way. So unless someone else is coming in to do another cold storage facility, which I would probably find it hard to believe that another cold storage facility would want to go this close to this one, the next best thing is probably storage buildings, warehouse and distribution that can come on this property. And I do always remind people, if this doesn't come here, what if somebody wanted to put homes, residential homes, that's going to impact the schools, that's going to put more traffic on the road? So all these different factors do come into play when we're looking at, hey, what's available to come here now? How can we eliminate some of the impact to some of the neighbors? And I think the only two questions here today is, one ordinance says you can't face the docks towards the residents, the other ordinance says you can't face it towards the road. So the question got posed, well, which way do we face the loading docks? I would much rather have them facing the interstate versus facing the residents. I think that was a big bone of contention even several years ago when some changes were asked to be made about, we don't want these loading docks facing any direction going towards our homes. I even remember the conversation, someone asked a question about the trucks backing up when they make the beeping sounds throughout the middle of the night. So I remember those conversations real vivid, and I think just seeing the neighbors come back out with their concerns, but I think these concerns that we're asked to be considering tonight, I think they are within reason. Obviously, there's still some conversation to be had between the neighbors and the applicant, but I like the proposal, I like the plan, and hopefully we can address them in a manner which everybody can feel comfortable moving forward. So I'll be supporting it.
All right, thank you. And as I said, I spoke with Ms. Cox earlier, and she said that since she couldn't be here this evening, she supported her votes, and there's another one in her district a little later. Going through first reading, she has concerns. Obviously, a lot of the neighbors have concerns. That's definitely something the applicant needs to address, as we say every time. I can understand Mr. Howell's concern with his mom. I'm not, I live on the corner of a major highway, and I can't tell you how many times vehicles turn in on my street and it shines right through my windows and stuff. We had to close doors and rearrange things a little bit so it doesn't reflect down through and wake us up in the middle of the night when people turn in and out. So there are some issues, some concerns, but that's why we do 3 readings on this, as some other council members have said, so that we have time for the applicant to work with the neighbors and see if something can be worked out that the 7 of us up here can support. And definitely, I know Ms. Cox will be back at it hard tomorrow, so make sure everyone reaches out to her. And with that said, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes on first reading. Next is rezoning action, hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 22-24, tax map 658-0000-044 to rezone from RSF 1 or RSF 30 to LI 1 acre in Council District 1, Mr. Audette's district. So, Mr. Morno.
Yes, the applicant actually owns the property immediately to the north. He's got a landscaping business there, and he's seeking to acquire the property to the south that's the subject of this rezoning application to expand that business, and that property is 1 acre. This is a zoning map for the area. So the subject parcel and the majority of the neighborhood on South Sutton Road is zoned RSF 30. There are some non-residential uses scattered amongst those parcels, but far and away the predominant use of the area is residential. And of course that LI property immediately to the north. The comprehensive plan calls for the west side of Sutton to be single-family residential and the east side to be neighborhood residential. And for that reason, light industrial is not compatible with those existing neighborhoods of the comprehensive plan, so staff recommends denial of this rezoning request, and by a 5-3 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends denial. However, similar to a previous application this evening, if council does move to approve, staff has recommended the following conditions. The first being that the existing block building at the front property line shall be removed prior to final zoning compliance approval. You can see that it's very close to the right-of-way on Sutton Road. It's a safety issue. It's very deficient in terms of the 30-foot distance that they're required to have from a road. Second condition being that the site plan shall be designed to close the 2 existing access points onto Sutton Road from tax map parcel 658-000-0044. The access point shall be closed prior to final zoning compliance approval. And the last being that access to the site expansion area shall be taken from Sutton Road through the existing access on that other tax map parcel. And the reason for those conditions is you might be able to tell from the aerial that parcel is essentially one giant curb cut. There's a lot of gravel on there. So trying to limit the number of access points to one controlled access point for the site if it's approved to be expanded.
Any questions for Jonathan?
Jonathan, is there a picture showing what is to the south of that? I guess that's south of the bottom of that. Okay. What is the little white building beside that concrete building?
I believe that is a home.
So is that property,
yes, that's a residence.
Property line is right beside it?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So this applicant is looking to expand an existing business?
That's correct.
How long, apparently it's been there for a while, correct? If it's not allowed now? How long was this?
So the property was rezoned. The north property was rezoned to LI a few years ago. And So it hasn't been that long since that landscaping business has been there. So it was not originally zoned LI. That was a rezoning of council some years ago.
Anyone else with any questions?
Yeah, I have one more. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So would they have to buffer between their property and the residence that's there? What would that look like going forward?
Yes, they would have to, once they expanded that site, all of the land development regulations that control, including buffers, would have to be adhered to in their site design.
Is that that's a 50-foot buffer, or is it wider there?
Offhand, I don't know, and there is an amendment to buffer requirements in the batch 2 amendments tonight, so if that goes through, that will be modified as well, but I can follow up with you on the answer, both current and proposed.
Did I see a question over this way?
No, I just wanted, no,
I was just looking at the property, and I'm very familiar with this property. I looked at it a few years back as a possibility myself. Just the expansion of it is primarily, from my understanding, is to, so you don't have to clear cut everything that's there now to kind of make room. Is that what's been expressed?
I believe the applicant's here tonight, so he might be able to elaborate more specifically on what his intents for the property are.
Okay.
yeah. No, I think you've already answered my question. Just to confirm that the existing property is LI at this point, that he currently has his business at. And the property that he's looking at is basically, as we look at this lot here, it's to the right of it, correct? I just want to make sure what I'm looking.
No, so the property that the applicant currently owns is immediately to the north, so you see that graded area.
Right.
And so the subject property of this rezoning is in that outline in red immediately to the south.
To the south of it, yeah. Okay, very good, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, then would anyone like to speak against this rezoning? If so, come up, state your name and address. All right, anyone in favor of this rezoning?
Good evening. My name is Nate Negrin, property owner at 187 Sutton Road South. Address is 2101 Greenway Avenue in Charlotte. First off, thank you guys for considering this rezoning. Seems like there's a few questions from council. Hopefully I can clarify that with just a short kind of rundown of the plan. So currently we occupy 2 acres on Sutton Road. I don't have the exact date either, but at some point in years past, it was zoned as light industrial. Let's say the 80s or 90s, so it's been a long time. There was a person operating a welding business there for a long time, an old resident of Sutton Road. So when the property came up for sale about 3 years ago, I moved my business from Lancaster County to this location on Sutton Road. It's allowed us to sort of grow and expand, and we started with maybe 10 or 12 employees at this location, and now we've got more like 25. And so as I look to expand or to make a little bit more room for both the hourly kind of employees that work for us and the professional sales managerial type employees that work for us, I tried to come up with the best way to continue to stay in this location and grow in sort of a low impact way. By expanding to the additional acre, I'm kind of looking at the chart there. Ms. Brogdon, okay, great. I handed out 7 copies, so I hope that's enough for the team. And basically, as we're looking to expand, what we did with the 2 acres was I was able to move onto the property. There's an existing home that's been there for 100 years that we're able to upfit, as you can see kind of in the bottom right-hand picture of the graphic that I displayed. It is on the property line, and we're able to get a variance to occupy that as a commercial space, bring it up to code. In addition, whoever had done the clearing for the light industrial property and had been doing whatever they were doing before I bought the property had not been doing any of that with a permit or any sort of allowance from the county. So I was able to buy the property, install the necessary buffers, bring it up to code, and move the driveway to coordinate with my neighbor across the way, and all the things necessary to sort of develop an industrial property. Obviously, sorry, it behooves me that this is a much smaller industrial property than Lazy Hawk Road, but I just decided to throw that out there. It's only an acre, but it's the same kind of stuff. Anyhow, the last thing I wanted to say is just in summary, this will allow us to park another 2 or 3 additional trucks on the 1 acre. It will allow us to operate in a very low impact way, consistent with how I'm operating on the 2 acres now. As I said, we could sort of take down a bunch of trees and occupy the 2 acres more fully. We're probably occupying about 1 acre of the 2 acres that we have now, which allows it to be sort of a low impact wooded, friendly neighbor. And then finally, some of the conditions that staff has requested, I'm okay with. I think one of the key things that we want to do is, if you can see on the Sutton Road side, it's a bit of an on-ramp. If you look at the picture in the upper left-hand corner, it used to be a gas station or some sort of convenience store owned by Mr. Grady Hope, who owned all of that land at some point in the past. And our goal would be to continue the horse fence that you can see. It's hard to see in the pictures, but basically continue that horse fence all the way along, establish trees, buffer, and other things that make it sort of a nicer addition to the neighborhood. The neighborhood right now is pretty mixed use with car dealerships and various industrial stuff back in the woods and churches and things like that. And we just want to clean up our portion and limit any impacts. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those at the appropriate time. But for now, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in favor?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Is there a new motion?
Yeah, motion to approve with conditions.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any comments? I'll start with Ms. Sutton.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Nathan for the time we spent on the phone talking. I think what we talked about here, having the property be an existing light industrial, utilizing the property very lightly by just adding an additional 2 vehicles to the property. I think what he's proposed here, in what it brings to me to keep a business in the area, such as his, is very important. He also handed out to us 2 documents, and he took the due diligence to go around to his neighbors and to talk with them. And they're again, these documents state that they are in support of this change of zoning. So tonight I will be supporting this rezoning, and thank you, Nathan. Appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you.
Comments on this side? All right, and all in favor of the motion to approve with conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Next is rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 22-28, tax map 608-0000213 to rezone from RMX 20 to RSF 30, 7.743 acres in Council District 5, Council Cox District.
This is a very straightforward application. So the applicant is seeking the RSF 30 zoning district so that they would be able to locate a manufactured home on the property to serve as their primary residence. And that's the sole goal of the application. So there is, in the immediate vicinity, directly adjacent to this property, some existing RSF 30 property, as well as in the area to the east there. And the comprehensive plan recommends this area to be single-family residential, so this application conforms to the plan in that respect. So staff recommends approval, and by an 8-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Any questions for Jonathan? I have one. It looks like this parcel does not have road frontage. So is there an easement or something with this, or is that just?
Yeah, I believe there is an existing easement. If there's not, they'd have to establish one.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, is there anyone who would like to speak against this rezoning? Anyone in favor? All right, a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Is there a new motion?
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Any further discussion? All those in favor of the rezoning on first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move to the next one. Rezoning, hold a public hearing and consider first reading of case number 22-29, tax map number 46500000029 and 46500000048 to rezone from RSF 40 to RUD 10 plus or minus acres in Council District 2, Councilman Love's district. So,
Yes, this application does include two separate parcels, one of which has frontage on Rainbow Circle and the other has frontage on Highway 557. The request is to go to RUD, and that is because the property is currently under a code violation. They have a use violation for animal production and livestock keeping or raising, which is not permitted in their current RSF 40 district. So they are seeking to rezone the property so they are able to keep their livestock. As you can see from the list of animal inventory at the site of the violation, there are 15 goats, horses, donkeys, some alpacas, chicken, geese, turkeys, ducks. So quite a bit, a collection of animals there. So this application, unlike a similar one a few months back, this application, while it is adjacent to an existing residential subdivision, it is not part of that subdivision. And the designation here is rural residential, unlike that other application. So that land use category does allow for RUD as a consistent district. So staff recommends approval of this application, as does Planning Commission by a vote of 8-0.
right. Any questions for Jonathan? All right, then we'll open it up. Is there anyone who would like to speak against this rezoning? Anyone in favor? Oh, okay. Please remember to state your name and address.
Kevin Nyberg, 321 Rainbow Circle, Clover, South Carolina. This property, I don't know how it was not in violation before, perhaps. I guess maybe the number of animals, but I moved to Rainbow Circle in 1996, and there'd long been cattle and horses on the property, never any problem, always very pleasant, small hobby farm. And a little bit of a worry a few years ago, when the place went vacant and went up for auction, that it might get developed and we could get crowded in and have some possible problems with pollution or ground pollution contaminating our wells and whatnot. And you know, I like it. It was a relief to see someone come back in, to see the fences be mended, to see the horses come back. I think it's good for the neighborhood. I think it helps the property values. I think it's a good buffer. All of Rainbow Circle has a very rural residential feel, larger lots, all wooded. And I like it. They've been doing a good job over there. They've put up some good sturdy fencing. It looks good. The barns they built look really good. And I'm in favor of the rezoning for this one. I like it. I think it's good for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in favor?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Klaus, reside at 335 Rainbow Circle. This is my wife, Carol. We've been living in the neighborhood since 2017. It's a great neighborhood. We're excited to be there. We're excited that we have our own little piece of heaven. That's why we bought it. It's quiet, it's serene, it's our American dream. It's our little place that we can call ours. And when we see good folks coming into our neighborhood, and trust me, I'm not against development. I think it's necessary, it's crucial, despite a lot of my reservations that I have for it. I understand the need for it. But when I go and I meet my neighbors and I talk with them and I see what they're doing, not hear secondhand, not walk around in the dark handing out letters or trying to persuade people that things aren't what they really are. These are honest folks that have come here and truly just wanted to fulfill their American dream. They wanted to make something that was their little piece of heaven also. They've worked hard. I've been down there. I've seen what they've done. I've seen what they continue doing. And the Hoffmans are nothing but upstanding citizens that do not deserve to have anybody slandering them or saying anything in the negative about what they're attempting to do here. I've seen them taking in animals that, quite honestly, everybody else was discarding and throwing away, and I've seen them make these animals healthy. I've seen them care for them. I've seen them give them an awesome opportunity for a good, healthy life. And I think it's really something that we all ought to take a moment, pause, and think about when it comes to what we want for our future, for our neighborhoods, for your neighborhood. We could have, like Mr. Nyberg said earlier, I believe we did dodge a bullet. A developer could have come in there, like they have through Clover, and they could have just put up these cookie cutter homes within spitting distance of each other, or like my last home that I moved out of in Spartanburg, where a strip mall went up behind my house after I purchased it, and dumpsters were being emptied at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I tell you what, there's a lot worse things than having some awesome sheep or a couple of horses or a couple of donkeys. That it's the country. It's America. I mean, we need to just slow down and love each other and be neighbors. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And really, anything else I add to this is just going to be compounded by silliness. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor?
Hi, I'm George Sells. I live at 198 Rainbow Circle. We moved here from Cincinnati, or moved there from Cincinnati in 1993. And the charm of why we moved there were the houses, or the horses and the cows on the corner. And every day when we turn onto the street and we see that collection of animals, it brings a smile to our face. That's why we support it.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Ray Courtney DeMore. I live at 115 Rainbow Circle. That's right across the road from the farm in question. My home was built by my grandparents in 1974, about the same time that their home was built by Mr. Bob and Miss Dot. My granddaddy and my dad, Gene Courtney, he came to support me tonight. They raised pigs, cows, chickens, and honeybees there for years. Mr. Bob had horses, as you've heard several times. Over time, Mr. Bob, he got older, and his pastures overgrew, his fences weren't taken care of. Until Gary, Maryland, they came in and they cleaned it all up. And I can't even, everybody's been speaking about it, but the amount of work they put into that place is just amazing. I feel, as other people have already said, the most important thing to remember is that their pastures, their fences, their barns, their stables, it was all there when they bought the place. And I wish that each of you could come, take a chair, come sit in my front yard where I live and see what they're doing. See what I see, that it's well kept, smell what I smell, and that's nothing, which is amazing for a farm. But I don't have a single negative impact on my day-to-day life because of their farm, because of their animals. My kids love it. We watch them all the time. That we're watching. I never knew how much I like donkeys until Gary and Maryland. So, I just know I'm very lucky to have them as my neighbors, and I hope and pray that you'll vote in favor of them tonight or whenever. That I think to do otherwise would mean literally destroying their livelihood, their lives, simply because someone is uneducated in agriculture and doesn't like the way their fence looks. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor?
Hello, my name's Tony Paysauer. I have laryngitis. I live right behind them. My land connects to them at 450 Rainbow Circle. And that land was owned by my father. I'm the one that had the horses all the way back to the 1980s. And my dad passed away a couple years ago at 96. And so my sister and I decided to sell it. And we hoped that it would be a horse farm. And we got lucky. And those animals, I can see from my kitchen window. I can see the horses and the donkey and the alpacas, and I love it. And I would hate to see them have to get rid of some of those animals are rescues, and it would be hard to place them. And I think the people that knew my father knows that he would be happy that it turned into a farm. And we had cows and horses and goats, and nobody ever said a word. I don't think my dad knew that you weren't supposed to have some of those. You know, nobody ever said a word, and the same guy lived there. So I don't understand unless it's just a personality conflict. Thank you.
I'm hoping I'm the last one, but I do not live on Rainbow Circle. My name is Donna Martin. My husband and I were the ones that bought the property at the auction, and we had a choice of developing the land or keeping it as it was. And we thought about developing it, breaking it into acres, and we did not do that because Gary and Marilyn came along, and we knew it should stay a farm. So I'm so happy all the neighbors seem to appreciate them. I think we did the right thing.
And I'm sorry, could I ask you to state your address for the
Oh,
clerks?
I'm sorry. I live at 433 Terrapin Lane in Clover.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor? Motion and a second. Whoop.
My name's Gary Hoffman. I live at 112 Rainbow Circle. We purchased the house and 5 acres in 2020 for $327,000. We purchased additional 5 acres in July of 21 for 137,000 acres. That came up to $454,000. At the present time, they're estimating their property is worth $654,000 in 2 years. That is $190,000. So this letter that was going around about impacts resale of the value of Rainbow Circle, and then the danger of traffic accidents from the animals. I have approximately, at this time, I don't have all my fence up, but at the present time, I have a little over $25,000 in fencing in 2 years. That's what we installed, over $25,000 worth of fencing. And then it says the muddy, unsightly property and animals. Well, we just had the environmental down there. I just had to put in a $5,200 retention pond to do for the runoff that's coming off of our property and other properties. And I have a letter here that the environmental people are, at this present time, they are up to par with everything we've done. We've installed over 200 foot of silk fence and built a 40 foot by 4 foot deep retention pond. That was approximately $5,200. They are wanting me to plant seed and fertilizer, but put $2,750 in seed and fertilizer, and naturally we had a dry summer. So now they're giving me to the end of October to try to establish a little more grass. And the explaining to children about animals fornicating, That's absolutely absurd.
And this is the letter that has been passed around to everybody on Rainbow
and
Circle, all the way over.
My only answer to that is that animals was created by God, and they do not follow the laws of the land or of the people. It's called nature. I have never seen an animal fornicate. I've never seen an animal get married to even fornicate. And there is no HOA on Rainbow Circle. Whoever put this letter out, there is no HOA. And the last thing I have to say, that this letter that was placed in everybody's mailbox, it is illegal by the federal to place anything in anyone's mailbox that does not belong to you, that does not have revenue attached to it. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I would also like to add, I'm his wife, I'm Marilyn. I live at 112 Rainbow Circle. I would also like to add, above and beyond everything, I'd like to thank all you guys that came out tonight to support us. These animals are our babies. And when we first got the letter to get rid of the animals within 15 days, like she said, some of them have disabilities. You can't place them that quick unless they go into another bad home. So we just wanted them to live their life out with us. And I'm hoping that, you know, with all the people that are standing behind us, that you all will vote in our favor. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll give one more call for anyone else in favor.
Move to close.
Second.
All right, motion and second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve first reading. Any comments?
Those are my people.
Yep.
That's my people. So I just want to say that I think what they've done there is a good thing. It's there. If anything's ever been grandfathered, this was grandfathered in our minds. I like it. I love it. I wish we had more of it. I'm going to support it all the way through third reading.
Yes, sir.
You know, as the speakers were coming up, first thing I asked myself was, how do we even get here? You know, how did this even come? And understanding how zoning rules have changed over the years, and some things may have come into play that weren't in place when the young lady's father originally had the animals there. But this is definitely a no-brainer. I'll say openly that staff approved it, planning commission approved it. So, like I said earlier, I got a lesson in cold storage and dry storage. Now I got a good civics lesson tonight about, you know, people who overwhelmingly care about their neighbors, who care about animals. And I was going to ask, you know, with all the neighbors come up, I was going to ask was Gary and Marlene in the audience, because typically when neighbors come, they come to speak against a lot of stuff. We very rarely see neighbors come out to speak for something in their community. So that speaks to the speaks volumes to the neighbors that's in the neighborhood. It speaks volumes to the family that owns the farm, and some of the rescue animals that they have. This was what our souls need to hear. We need to see good neighbors back in our neighborhoods, speaking up for what's right. And even if staff would have said no and the planning commission would have said no, I guarantee you the 6 of us that's here tonight would have still said yes, because this is what it means to be neighborly. This is what it means to have a compassion about something that you're compassionate about. And obviously rescuing animals and having a farm. Like the lady said, she didn't know she liked donkeys until she was able to open up a door and see them out there. You know, so this is our culture here in York County. You know, you won't see this downtown Rock Hill. You won't see this downtown York, but you can see it on the outskirts and what we call God's country over in Sea Lover, as a lot of people like to say, over in Clover. So glad I had an opportunity to hear some of the neighbors and hear the stories that go behind it, because everybody has a backstory to what they're into, what they like, and what they're passionate. So I'm sure, I can't speak for everybody up here, but this was a good night to hear some good stories after all that's going on in our country and in our community. So thank you for sharing your heartfelt concerns about what we allow and what we don't allow. So thank you.
If I had known Gene Courtney was gonna be sitting on the road too, I'd ask him to bring everybody some hush puppies tonight.
Yeah, I want to know why you had to put in a $5,000 retention pond. That's the big question I have. I mean, seriously, as a farm that's there, why are you having to put out a retention pond, something that's been there forever? And these are the situations that really infuriate me with government, zoning, rules, and regulations. It should just be a simple call without having to worry about whether a retention pond's going there. I mean, if it was residential to begin with, why does a retention pond need to be there? Can staff answer that for me?
Yeah, so when it comes to stormwater retention, the county is enforcing federal and state law, so this is not something that the county has created. I don't have the specifics of why that retention pond was required on hand, but I will follow up with our stormwater compliance folks and find out for you.
Okay, I'm just not aware of any residential that really has to have a retention pond on it.
It's based
not
on
a
the
neighborhood.
it's based on the amount of disturbance, even for a single family residential property. It's based on the total amount of land disturbance.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to the landowners for taking care of these animals and going through that recovery process with them. Excellent work, excellent. And thank you for everybody being out to support them. Thank you.
And I'll just echo what everyone else has said. It's good to hear people out in support of something every once in a while. Usually it's the other way, so. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, next is rezoning action. Hold public hearing and consider first reading, case 22-30, tax map 18200000079, to rezone from AGC to RUD 8.128 acres in Council District 3, my district.
Yes, this application is to rezone the property from that AGC district to RUD. It is a single property now. The applicant would like to subdivide it into 3 parcels. The applicant actually spoke earlier this evening. Based on the existing road frontage that the applicant has, by code, he is limited to the number of lots he can create through a subdivision, and that is 3. So he can create up to 3 and no more than that to be accessed by an easement. So that is what he's proposing to do. And that request is consistent with the rural residential future land use. And as you can see on the zoning map, it's got some RUD behind that property, and across the street is some RUD1 properties that are developed in the piano key lot fashion there. So this is in keeping with the development trajectory of the area. And so staff recommends approval, and by an 8-0 vote, Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Any questions for Jonathan? All right, thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this rezoning?
My name's Trent Dye. I live on 3026 Ranger Road. I'm against this rezoning. Actually, I'm neighbors to the guy that bought it. From what I'm understanding, there's 3 parcels. He's got 150 foot of road frontage. Planning on putting the easement in there. Just don't see it happening. The backside of the property is very steep grade by a topographical map. It is almost straight down the hill. There's enough hassle on that road as it is. I just don't know why there needs to be even more. He's got a nice house as it is. Plenty of room to go around. I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else against?
My name is Scott Young. I live at 3010 Ranger Road. If you look at the property that we're talking about today, it's directly across the street, 4 houses down, so it does not directly affect me. However, it does directly affect my neighbors. If I lived next door to this property, there'd be a for sale sign in my front yard right now. I moved from Fort Mill to get away from this stuff. My 4 kids and my wife love living out in the country. That was why we moved on this road. to get away from downtown Clover, to get away from all the homes and the people and the commercialization. We have goats, we're fixing to get chickens. I don't want more homes built on this road. The speed limit is 25. People already do 55, 60 on this road. I've almost got in a fight with several people that have almost killed my children, okay? We don't need more homes in rural communities. People want to build homes, build them in downtown, build them near downtown. We like it the way it is. It's very beautiful out there. It's country. I've walked that property. My wife's family almost bought that property and paid cash for it, but the owner turned down our offer. If you walk on the property, you'll get about the first 2 acres where it's in a flood zone, okay? And then it drops straight off all the way down to a creek. Means it's not buildable. So how are you gonna fit 3 homes on the first 2 acres with 150 front of footage? You're cramming 3 homes. I think if somebody wants to build 1 home, that would be perfect. That's what my wife's family was going to do. They were going to build a long driveway back to the back 2nd acre. That's far back as you could get to build a home, and that way you wouldn't see the home from the road. That's what, if you look at all the homes going down the right-hand side of Ranger Road, look like. They're all off the road, you can't see them. I'm actually a part of the problem. Half the road probably doesn't even want me there because I live on the left-hand side where there's new homes. But we love the country living. We just couldn't afford 20, 30, 40 acres. That's why we left Fort Mill, because of stuff like this. People coming out trying to cram home after home after home on these lots. And that's all Fort Mill is now. I appreciate your time.
Anyone else against? Anyone want to speak in? Oh, okay.
My name is Judy Queen. I live at 3111 Ranger Road. My husband and I bought the 5 acres that we live on back in 1992. And we gave 5 acres to our daughter. We bought another lot and we gave it to her daughter, our daughter. And she's sitting right here. Her home is going to be backed up against those houses that are going to go in there. There's going to be 3 of them on that little stretch. He's going to build a road into that lot. And those 3 houses are probably going to be butted up to her property line. She will have no privacy unless you build up a big wall between the houses, between her house and theirs. I just don't like them changing. We moved on that road and it was a graveled road. And everybody called it a dirt road, but it was wonderful. And then they paved it and we said, ooh, that's even better. But now they're just putting houses and houses. Our little Bethany school is so overcrowded, they're gonna have to build a new one or add to it. And even our Clover High School is just being, boom, so many houses, so many people. And we don't need any more out there in Bethany. Now, 1 person on that road would be, in that lot would be okay, because that's what everybody else is. We live in the country, and I want it to stay that way. I know you gotta go with the flow and be in the progress. But we moved there over 30 years ago, and it was just nothing but woods. And that's what I loved, living in the woods. My children grew up there in the woods. That's all I have to say is I don't like it, and I don't think it's right that he can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else against? All right, anyone in favor?
How are you? I'm John Paloka.
Yes, sir.
And I live at 3034 Ranger Road. We've resided there since right before the pandemic, 2020. And we love it. We love the community, and I believe that we are more than neighborly. As you can see in the zoning plan, we live directly across the street from the property that I want to subdivide and put 3 homes on. There's 196 feet of road frontage on Ranger Road, and then you can see it gets wider as you go in your depth. Again, there are 5 agricultural lots, 14 RUD lots, and over 29 RUD1 lots along Ranger Road, which is probably, my guess, about 2.5 miles. What we are asking for is definitely within the 30-year plan for the area. We want to comply with the zoning. It's my understanding that we could have up to 8 lots, but it would be not cost effective because we would have to put in a true road, and because of the little hollow in the back of the property, it would just not be conducive and economically feasible to do that. I grew up in an urban city. I love it in the country. It was the best decision I ever made, was moving out here. And I never thought I would move away from where I was from. The integrity of what we are planning to do is to keep at least 50 foot of woods along and keep as much wood as possible, wooded area, and just only build for where the actual homes are needed. We want to subdivide it into 3 lots, 2 1-acre lots, and then a 6-acre lot. The 6-acre lot will be for me, my significant other, and her mother. The other 2 lots are up in the air. We didn't know this was going to be part of our plan until we found out what we can and cannot do with the property. I do have 2 children, and there has been other neighbors interested in purchasing one of the lots as well. So we don't know what we're going to do, to be honest with you. Trying to think. I believe, I appreciate all of the work that the county has helped me with through this process. And again, anything we put up would be with integrity and respect of keeping as much of the property wooded as possible, and with a well-built structure. Thank you for your consideration.
Anyone else in favor?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. We need a new motion.
Second.
All right, now, it's my area, but I'll let y'all speak since you first.
I think, looking at this picture, I think it's a shame that people have to keep moving further and further out. Because ultimately, you go out so far that you meet the other people coming toward you. And you find yourself surrounded by what's across the street from this lot. I'm very familiar with this road. I'm familiar with the horse farm that's out there. I'm familiar with the flower farm that's out there, and several of these neighbors. And I think the value system is different. So if you move here and you're not from around here, you might think it's a great idea to come in and divide something into 3. It concerns me that somebody would do that and not know what they're going to do with 2 of the 3. But I feel like that we have got to maintain the integrity of Western York County. And until we all agree that that's the right thing to do, we are watering down the rural parts of York County, one neighborhood at a time. And I'm as opposed to this as anything I've seen in a long time. So, and I will be through 3rd reading.
Yeah, I went ahead and gave the second because it's going to have to go to vote regardless. But you know, I have multiple problems. For one, the locals that live there don't seem to be in favor of it from hearing them speak. Number 2, it's getting rid of more AGC, which is I'm not a fan of. It doesn't like it's not as if a development's coming in and it's the whole area that's coming out. This is just kind of being carved out. And then I really just did not like the fact you said you don't know what you're going to do with the property. And that does not, there is no planning, and especially whenever you're in a rural area and you're not sure of what's going to happen there, to go from a dirt road to a development coming out there, you know, I'm not one that typically goes against what anyone wants to do on their land. But if you can't have the discussion and work with the neighbors, it's very difficult to go ahead and approve it.
I'll say, since it's my area, you've heard me say this a lot lately. In almost 8 years I've sat up here, I've never voted against anything on the first reading. I will not vote to deny this tonight. I do have a lot of concerns. I appreciate the neighbors coming out, but I've made it a policy for 8 years to never deny something on the first reading. There's a reason we have 3 readings. It gives time for the applicant to talk to the neighbors, the people to talk to me, because this is my district. And I hate to say it, but I haven't heard a single thing from any of the neighbors or the applicant. That's what I'm here for. So, well, you do now, so please call me. That's why I ran for this seat. That's why I sit up here, is to represent you, and so I can't represent you if I don't hear from you. That is why I do not vote to kill it on a first reading, though. I will not support the motion to deny tonight, because I want to hear from the neighbors. I want to meet with the applicant. I want to come out there and look at the property and figure out what's going on. And I want to have time to do that, and I won't have time to do that if we deny it tonight. So, yes.
I just want to say real quick, we get our packets on Thursday. We got this past Thursday. And some of us do have time to sit down and go through it. And Robert's been, like you said, for the last 8 years, he hasn't turned anything down on first reading. Obviously, we do get the opportunity to ride out in some of these areas when things are going to be, you know, somewhat contested or somewhat questioned. But it does allow, moving to second reading does allow that conversation to be had between a constituent and a council member. Because from Thursday till today, there's no opportunity that these conversations could have been had between a council member, the applicant, and neighbors. So this does give an opportunity for the applicant to hear the concerns of the neighbors to hear what's ultimately will be decided with the property. And as he stated, he's not fully sure what he's going to do with it. But one thing about what comes along with this particular rezoning, if we rezone this to RUD does allow to subdivide. And like I said, if he wanted to put 8 lots, then it's a subdivision. Now he has to put a road. He has to do certain things. But asking for it to be 3 keeps it below the radar, keeps down some of the things that he would have to do if he wanted to put more homes on there. And many of you heard me ask the question about the comp plan, or make the pin earlier about the comp plan. When people come in and say, well, the comp plan says it. Well, just like I mentioned earlier, the comp plan is not the Bible, it's not the gospel. It's a measure, it's a tool that guides us. Sometimes staff follows it, sometimes councils follows it, sometimes we don't. And that's why I don't like to hear staff always say, well, the comp plan says. Well, sometimes there are things that's going to be outside the comp plan that make sense, and there are going to be sometimes things outside the comp plan doesn't make sense. So I always like to use that comp plan as a guiding tool, not as the Bible, not as the gospel, because there are going to be things that come up that we can't foresee to 2035 that the comp plan says yes. There are going to be some things in that comp plan that we're going to say no to. There are going to be some things in the comp plan that we say yes to. So to me, it's a sliding scale tool that we get to use, but I won't be the one to hide behind just because the comp plan says it or the comp plan doesn't say it. I think we have to take each particular instance case by case and ask ourselves, does it make sense? Now, coming out to the neighborhoods, and we've had several rezonings in everybody's district where, you know, we want to make sure we protect the character of the neighborhood. I would hate to ride out and see an area that's got 5 acres, 5 acres, 5 acres, 5 acres. And then all of a sudden you see 3 or 4 houses jammed on 5 acres. That doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. So this does open up the dialogue between everybody involved, especially Councilman Winkler, who I'm sure will do his due diligence to come out and see what this is going to look like, have a chance to talk with the applicant, have a chance to talk to the neighbors. And that's kind of where we're at. You know, we can always rush to judgment when we get something on Thursday, come here off a weekend and say yes or no. But it doesn't do the process any good when we do it that way. So I think that's why Robert, and I can't speak for him, he's always been on the side of, hey, this is first reading, let's have some conversation and see where it leads. Obviously now the applicant knows some concerns, and we always encourage the applicant to talk to the neighbors to see if there's a medium ground that everybody can agree to. And I think these conversations need to be had between the applicant and the neighbors, because it will have to come back for second reading. I would like to see the conversation at least had, and if it can't be worked out, then the ultimate decision is going to rest with obviously 7 of us that's going to sit up here. So definitely, neighbors, have the conversation. If something can be worked out, it can be worked out. If not, ultimately, yeah, we'll get to make that ultimate decision, and hopefully it's the right one for the entire area, not just 1, 2, or a few. So that's where I stand at it.
Just a quick comment. I think in this situation, I think hearing, both sides on this thing, I think there is an opportunity here for, I think, further discussion around what may work for everybody involved here. So I would look forward to seeing this go to a second reading here, just to allow you all to speak and have those conversations. Yeah.
Any more comments? All right, the motion is to deny. All in favor of denying, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
No. All right, the motion to deny dies 4-2. Is there a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to approve on the first reading. Any further comments? I'll just say again to all of you, please reach out to me. That's what I'm sitting up here for. I know I'm a short timer, but I'm still here. I'm still here till the end of December. So reach out to me. But before the second reading, I want to make the best decision I can for everyone. And so my numbers are on the cards here where I normally sit. And it's on the county website and everywhere, so you can find me, you can call me, and I'll come out and see you. Again, so on the first reading, to approve first reading, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next is council to hold a public hearing and provide third reading of an ordinance amending Title 8 General Offenses of the York County Code of Ordinances. Excuse me, that's Title 13, not 8. Ordinances in order to add Chapter 131, Prohibited or Restricted Conduct, to add definitions concerning conduct that is prohibited or restricted, including but not limited to aggressive manner, busker, panhandling, soliciting or solicitation, and trespass, to delineate behavior or activity that constitutes prohibited or restricted conduct, including but not limited to obstructing public rights-of-way, blocking rights-of-way, aggressive solicitation, disorderly conduct, camping on public property without permission, charitable solicitation, damaging county property, and trespassing upon county property, to provide penalties for violating the restrictions or prohibitions of certain conduct, to conduct a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. So since this is a public hearing, I'll continue as I have. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this motion? Anyone who would like to speak in favor?
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Is there a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think this, what's being changed here is a great move for supporting our sheriff's office and giving them the ability to address encampments, panhandling, et cetera. I think when you look at the ordinance or the laws from Rock Hill as opposed to York County, we need to strengthen this law as we're doing here. I think this is going to help out the district. It's going to help out the county. And it's going to eliminate that donut hole when it comes to encampments and panhandling. So they're going to be able to move quicker when they see these issues. And I think that, again, we've had impact in my district And we need to be able to support our law officers to be able to move fast to address encampments and panhandling. So I'm definitely in support of this. Thank you.
I just want to say, I typically don't question things like this, but the word that keeps sticking out to me on here is charitable solicitation. And that really bothers me. And I understand the intent, but I can think of firefighters sitting out with a bucket doing fundraisers. And that just worries me. Can you give any clarification? Would that be included in that?
Good evening. I'm going to let our general counsel address the specific legal issues, and I'll echo what Councilman Audette said is what this ordinance is doing is paralleling the City of Rock Hill's ordinances so that it's not easier to encamp in the city or the county or harder. And so it puts it on a level playing field where dealing with, you know, the elephant in the room, homelessness, which, anyway, that allows us, it allows for the rules to be the same no matter where you're at. And there are a lot of donut holes in Rock Hill City where, you know, they'll jump to the county and we have a business that's, the business is in the city and the parking lot is in the county, and, you know, and so anyway, that is sort of getting us on the same sheet of music so that we can deal with it, you know, across the board. And I'll let Council Heather Muzon explain the specifics of the.
So the city already has this in place. I mean, I understand the intent, so I don't necessarily have to go through that. It's the one thing that bugs me, and if it hadn't already been passed, then that would be something I'd be a little concerned about.
Just with the charitable solicitation, it just puts in an application and a permit process. So it lets us get a better track on who's supposed to be out there soliciting and who's not.
So it would give the county some say-so in who can get it. So if we'd have a group that's aggressive and we're aware of them, we can deny the permit, whereas, you know, obviously firefighters or charitable organizations like that would be permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I was going to make a quick comment, and maybe a question will come up once I start speaking. But I've had a couple conversations with Sheriff Tosin, and one thing I'll say openly is that, you know, I wish something like this could have come through the Public Works Committee, but he and I had a conversation as to where this come from. I actually called him and I asked him, are we having any issues with panhandling? Because that's the first word that jumped out to me into the statement. And obviously he alluded to a couple areas that we're having some issues in, and alluded to the donut holes. And it is true that we do have donut holes. I'm familiar with Rock Hill, not too much about Fort Mill, but if you can be riding down one street and you're in the city and all of a sudden a property's in the county, you know, and if someone's doing something nefarious or something they're not supposed to be doing on that particular piece of property, the City of Rock Hill is not going to handle it. I got to call the county. And so making this a unilateral thing across York County to encompass whether it's the City of Rock Hill, maybe Fort Mill has something similar, but we want to make sure we're applying all the rules and regulations across the board. Because we all know, you know, hard times can fall on anyone, and obviously the panhandling stood out to me because, you know, let's face it, who's going to be doing the panhandling? You know, someone who's down on their luck, who's probably homeless, who needs something to eat or what have you, for many different reasons. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be something that's going to obviously harass someone when they're out there trying to get something to eat, because many times I pulled up to a corner somewhere and, you know, someone's obviously panhandling, you know, and I've given them money. I've went into the QT and bought something to eat. That's life. You know, people are going to fall on hard times, but obviously we don't want people at every single corner asking for money, because that's when bad things happen, when, you know, it lends itself to a not so good situation. But we do know we have a homeless population in Rock Hill and York County, and I don't think this intent is to harass anyone. Obviously, if someone's down on their luck, hopefully we have some compassion in this community to help them in those situations. But I do understand the uniformity that we're going for to address some of the donut holes when it comes to law enforcement issues. So we definitely want to make sure we're doing it the right way, and obviously this will be put in place right away, and hopefully we don't have any major issues, but I still want to make sure everyone is mindful that, you know, people are down on their luck, and those are the ones that you're going to see. I got this panhandling underlined in this, but I think it'll help our sheriff's office in more ways than one, making it a unilateral situation for us.
Yes, sir, and if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Muzan, if you'll correct me or nod, there has to be an element of aggression to the panhandling.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would just add, Sheriff Tolson, thank you so much for your hard work on this and for the work of your deputies in doing everything they can to try to combat some of the issues that we have. As Councilman Roddy mentioned, we know people are down on their luck. As a county and as a community, we do a fantastic job of offering resources to help those people.
I would agree.
And in spite of, or even perhaps because of that success, we're seeing just a growing number of folks coming into this area, some looking for help, and we're able to help some, but unfortunately not all. And I've been told recently that we know of 50 encampments within the county, and so that's not a city of Rock Hill problem, that's not a town of Fort Mill problem, that is a county-wide problem. And the 50 are documented, but there's probably about another 8 or 10 out there that haven't actually been documented that people seem to know about. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that about accurate?
I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if that number is accurate. And the issue, and Councilman Audette and I have spent countless hours talking about this because he has constituents who call him, and you know, there's a concern about it, and if it's new to your area, it's makes you apprehensive.
That's right.
And you know, I tell Councilman Audette, tell his constituents, you know, we have a process that we have to go through, and it's a very lengthy process, and it's a complicated process, and you have to get an agent user agreement for the property owner to sign so that we can have the ability to charge trespassing. And anyway, I tell Councilman Audette, when we go do this and we, for lack of a better term, raid this encampment, just know we're just stepping on anthills, because the people that we're really dealing with here are comfortable with their living conditions and the way that they're leading their lives and living their lives. They're comfortable with it. And I will echo what you said. There are a lot of resources available, and we utilize those resources for those that are down on their luck and need temporary shelter and time to get back on their feet financially. And I'm, you know, a member of a number of nonprofits that deal with that. So I know what the resources are, and many of these folks deny those resources, or they'll use them for several days and then go back to the encampment. So it is certainly not just a law enforcement problem. We do deal with low-level, for the most part, low-level crimes, you know, misdemeanors mainly, drug use. There'll be shopliftings, petty thefts, things along those lines. But it's going to take a community effort, and what that answer is, I don't know. But if there's a town or a city that has addressed it effectively, I will pay out of my own pocket to go fly and look at the model, as should, you know, other leaders. And I know that, you know, there's a couple of task forces that are in place right now to deal with it, but this is just one tool that will let us deal with an immediate problem effectively, not the long-term solution.
Well,
Certainly.
please understand you have a council that's very supportive of your efforts.
I understand that. Thank you.
And if there's anything else you need that this body can help with to help with this issue, even with this new ordinance, if there's anything else that you need, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, you know, I agree with Councilman McGuffey. It concerned me when I saw the charitable part of it, and also concerns me a little because there are a lot of our population that's down on their luck and, you know, needs to be out there trying to feed a baby or feed themselves, but there are a lot of ways they can get around it, and you know, there's a lot of help in the community if they go ask for it. You know, one thing I always said though when I used to complain about a panhandler. My grandfather told me years ago when I was a little fella that, you know, if I can help out and I don't, I'll answer for what I do. And if I do help out and they misuse it, they'll answer for what they do. So I've always tried to keep that in the back of my mind when I see that. But we do have to have a way to address the problems with it. And I was actually, it's funny, somebody said QT. I was at QT just the other day. We had a county meeting and I had to run into QT to grab something, water or something, and there was a gentleman out front. And I gave him a little money. It was about dinner time. I said, are you aware that there's a place you can get a free meal right around the corner at Pathways and, you know, the House of Agape feeds and stuff? He said, yeah. And that was it. You know, he wasn't interested in going over there. He knew where it was at. So
That's what I had an officer tell me just the other day. There was an individual holding up a sign that said, nothing less than a 10, don't waste my time. That's your kind of guy, man.
All right. Well, thank you.
Can I say one quick? One of the things, again, you touched upon is Pathways. And, you know, the county has partnered with Pathways in the past and will continue to do that. In fact, we had donated a van to them last year as part of, you know, helping with transportation. But again, that ongoing partnership is there with Pathways. So absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Anything else? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And I'm going to do something because it's been a request from one of the other council members, and I agree. I'm going to call about a 3-minute recess, not very long. We've still got several public hearings and some more stuff to go. This won't be as long as it normally is in between our council meeting and our executive session, but several of us need to answer the call of nature, so we're going to have just a couple of minutes. About a 3-minute break. It's 8:42. I will gavel us back in at 8:45. All right. We got a majority back up here. I'm gonna call us back in session. Try to keep this moving along so we get out of here before midnight.
Michael, can we get some heat? Can we get the heat on again?
I think this,
I think we're
This is-
testing cold storage.
this is cold storage right here, man. Yeah, this is cold storage.
All right.
We're going back and forth.
Y'all gonna start bringing the grill.
Yeah. You see how Cheez-Its and stuff up there. All right, next is council to hold a public hearing and provide third reading of an ordinance authorizing the defeasance of certain water and sewer revenue bonds of York County, South Carolina, appropriating monies to provide for such defeasance and to acquire certain water and sewer assets, providing for the reimbursement of certain of such monies from the proceeds of tax exempt bonds and providing for certain other matters relating thereto.
Move to approve.
Well, we got a public hearing first, so we need to let,
Come on,
see if anybody wants to talk. Anybody want to speak against this? Anybody want to speak in favor?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Public hearing is closed. Now we need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I'll move on to reading the next one. Council to hold a public hearing and provide first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 154 Land Development Code to allow design professionals other than landscape architects to submit certain planting plans, to amend Chapter 155 zoning code, to amend several use definitions, to allow event venues, as a conditional use in AGC, AGC1, RUD, and RUD1, to amend the development standards for event venues, to eliminate rural event venues as a temporary use, to add trade services as a permitted use in certain districts, to apply conditions to heavy machinery sales, rental or repair uses, to reduce the required buffers for self-storage facilities with interior storage entrances, to reduce the minimum separation requirements for tattoo and body piercing establishments, to allow shrub planting to be waived if required buffers have excess trees, to reduce the minimum planting size of small maturing trees, to revise the buffer yard type and specification tables, and to increase the flexibility of alternative buffer yard compliance, to provide for a public hearing and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against this? Anyone who would like to speak in favor of this?
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Is there a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Jonathan, I just want to confirm that the tattoo establishment remains the same in the Lake Wiley overlay.
That's correct. That's in the draft.
Yes, sir.
I'll try to go through this pretty quickly, and I want to say it was, obviously, this is the result of the zoning committee's work that Brandon chairs. We had these very discussions. I guess that's how I was looking anyway. Since Allison steered this for us, we addressed a lot of things going back to the recode. We heard from several people early on that brought some of these issues to us. And I want to say thanks to Jonathan and staff for putting this bundle together to kind of get it all through at one time. But obviously, like I said, this was to address some issues that we saw in some areas that we heard from some people from different areas for us to work out the kinks and make it a little more reasonable and better so that they can move forward, we can move forward, and it makes sense. A lot of times we do things on paper that doesn't translate into wholly making sense in the real world. So this was an opportunity to go back and make some minor adjustments to some things that we hope this is going to be better for everything that we addressed in the zoning committee.
I'll speak quickly, so we're not holding up too long. But yeah, this has been, with the zoning committee, the way that we've been handling this, I've said it before, but I think that's the way government should work. As the public is coming to us with issues, we're able to have the conversations with people directly in the meetings, address the issues, offer solutions, and then put it before council. So, very happy with the way that things have worked out so far.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to thank Brandon and Bump for a lot of, and staff, obviously, for, there's been a lot of work. This is the kind of the aftershocks of the recode that we passed back in March. And there's still more to come, but we've had more meetings than normal as a committee, and we don't always agree on things, but we talk things out, and so the end result is better for the residents of the county. So thank y'all for the time, the extra time on in those committee meetings.
And I'll just say, as was said earlier by at least one person, we got this packet Thursday evening, and it was 414 pages long. And Friday we had a hurricane, and Saturday, Sunday, and this morning I had a hurricane in my house because I had 9 grandchildren spend the weekend with me. And so getting to read all of this and do a good job of it was a little challenging this past weekend, which is another reason that I like having 3 readings, because I do have some questions just on how this affects especially the event venues and stuff, because we've had some that have tried to do things by the books and we've had some that have not. And my question all along when we started this was I wanted to make sure we would treat them all equally and things are equal. So Jonathan, sometime before the next reading, I will be reaching out to your office, and I'd like to sit down and kind of go over everything page by page. I know you went over a red line with me in the agenda meeting the other day, but I'd like to have a little more time to understand it, and so I'll reach out to you the next couple of weeks to do that. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. All right, now we move into old business. Rezoning action considered second reading, case 21-02, tax map 555-00000044, to rezone from RSF 30 to NC 1.93 acres in Council District 2, Councilmember Love's district.
Mr. Brown has requested that we defer this to an upcoming meeting. He is working on a possible solution to the issues that he's got. So a motion to defer.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any more discussion for anything? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That is deferred to a further upcoming meeting. New business.
Take a breath.
Take a breath and take a drink here. Council to consider adopting a resolution supporting and authorizing the exercise of the county's power of eminent domain for purposes of condemnation of the water and sewer utility system, including all assets, personal property attendant to the operation of the utility system, infrastructure, real property, easements, and any appurtenances thereto controlled and operated by Blue Granite Water Company, FKA Carolina Water Service Incorporated, located within the franchise territory, the BG system as acknowledged and approved under the franchise agreement between York County and Carolina Water Service Incorporated, dated February 5th, 2018. Adding the BG system to the York County Water and Sewer Service territory, ending the franchise agreement with Blue Granite Water Company, FKA Carolina Water Services Incorporated, once the county takes the BG system through the condemnation proceeding, amending the maps of the York County Water and Sewer Service area to reflect such acquisition through condemnation, authorizing the county to enter into an asset turnover agreement, or ATA, with Blue Granite Water Company, governing the terms and respective obligations related to the transfer of the BG system and service area within the franchise territory to York County, authorizing pursuit of assignment to York County of the existing water supply agreement between Charlotte Mecklenburg Utilities and Blue Granite or alternatively pursuing an independent emergency water supply agreement with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Utilities to facilitate adequate water supply to the BG system once acquired, authorizing the execution of any documents necessary or related to the authorized condemnation action and transactions contemplated herein, and and providing for further matters related thereto.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. This, I believe, needs a little bit more.
Yeah.
Oh, motion to approve without referring this to committee.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Passes. Next, council to provide first reading of a master bond ordinance of York County, South Carolina, providing for the issuance and sale of water and sewer system revenue bonds and other matters relating thereto.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Council to provide first reading of a series ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of water and sewer system revenue bonds of York County, South Carolina, in the aggregate principal amount of not exceeding $26,950,000 and other matters relating thereto.
Move to approve.
Motion approved.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Next, council to consider first reading of an ordinance adopting public education facilities impact fee to be imposed on all new residential development in the York School District. Number 1, pursuant to York County Ordinance Number 2718, adopting impact fee procedures to ensure that the public education facilities will be available and adequate to accommodate the need for public education facilities expected to be generated from the school children in new residential developments in the school district, based on the district's level of service standards and capital improvements plan, to assign the cost of such public education facilities on a proportionate share basis to new residential development, with an established impact fee for single-family detached dwelling unit at $12,469, an established impact fee for multifamily dwelling unit at $10,237, and an established impact fee for a mobile home at $11,165, to authorize intergovernmental agreements between York County and the York School District, and York County and the municipalities of York, Sharon, Hickory Grove, McConnells, and Smyrna, defining the respective rights, responsibilities, and obligations of the parties regarding the impact fee, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Since this is in my district, I'll go ahead and make my comments first, and then I'll ask if there's any others. This has been a good while coming. We've been around to this, and we heard earlier that, we did hire an outside consultant to look at some part of it. There were some questions raised tonight that I would like to hear the school address, the school board and the administration. And I would hope that the school administration would get out and meet with as many as they can and address these issues before the final reading on this, because there's a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. I don't love impact fees. I think they're probably a necessary evil with the way the taxes are structured in this state at this time. I have issues with impact fees in that if I have no children in the school district, although I do have, I lose count how many grandchildren are in the school district. If I decided to sell my place and build a new one, I would have to pay an impact fee. That's not the school district's fault. That's the way the state law is written. So I have some concerns with the impact fee law itself, not necessarily this, because this is one of the ways we have to pay for it. And, I've supported Fort Mills when it came through. I did not support Clover's. my intention is to support this one, but I would like to see some of the questions addressed for the public and things answered on that. And now I'll open it up to other comments.
I just want to say the impact fees, whenever I first got on council, I was completely against impact fees. Started hearing some of the issues, and I understand how impact fees can kind of be a Band-Aid as a temporary solution, but bottom line is we've got bigger problems with funding in the schools. I'll support this on first reading, but I definitely want to hear some of the information that was brought to light today, and I want to make sure these numbers are accurate, that we are reviewing as well. The last thing we want to do is rush through this and make sure that we're not looking at every little detail of it.
So, the premise of the impact fees, being on the school board for 8 years, I saw the impact of 1,000 new students that hit the Fort Mill School District and the cost of it. When you look at a home or a townhome, you look at roughly 0.7 students per townhome or home. So you say 400 homes go in, that's 280 students. You divide that by the number of teachers that's going to take, and then you divide that also by the size of the school that you got to build. So if you add that in, you're looking at a third of a middle school, a third of a elementary school, which an elementary school can run 48 million. Middle schools can run up to 54 million. High schools 130 million. So the operating cost and the cost of getting the teachers and the cost of building the schools based on just putting 400 homes in to an area can be exponential to the public. So again, that's the value of the impact fees, to help support that extensional cost to capital and extensional cost to operating costs for our schools.
So I was supportive of the impact fee in Fort Mill, mostly because no one foresaw the extent or speed of that growth in Fort Mill. Fort Mill was just overrun. And was simply not enough runway to plan for and accommodate the amount of new building and construction that was necessary to accommodate that much population growth. Frankly, I don't know, and I'm not saying it isn't the case. I'm saying I don't know that that's the case here. It seems like, perhaps there's enough runway, 10 years out before we get to capacity to plan properly without having to impose a large impact fee. I'm going to go ahead and vote to pass it through this evening, but that doesn't mean that I'm supportive of these numbers and where we should actually land. Like Councilman Guffey said, there are some questions about some of the numbers that we just need to ensure are accurate. And we just need to spend more time with this rather than kill it on first reading. So I'll support it tonight, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm fully supportive of the total impact fee and how it's going to be assessed.
I guess it's my turn. I voted against the Fort Mill impact fees solely because the number that it came in at. There were some questions about what's the right number, We all support public education, we all support our kids. But looking back now, that's being used as a measuring stick for everyone else who comes in and asks for an impact fee. Did we get it right in Fort Mill? Did we get it wrong in Fort Mill? That's up for debate. But everybody who come in and asks for impact fees since then uses the Fort Mill model as to say, well, Fort Mill got 18,000. We heard it from Clover. We hear it from York. Clover's impact fee was reasonably less. Talking to some people in York about this upcoming impact fee, obviously, people wanted in York to help facilitate with the schools. The big question is, where is this going to come in? What's the dollar figure? And what's going to be the list of schools that the funds are going to be used for? Because we're going through some things now that I don't want to see happen over in York. We don't want to be going down through any kind of litigation to make sure that the study was right, the schools that were on there were bonded properly, because we have a mess on our hands dealing with some other issues in this county surrounding impact fees. I hope we use our past experience to make us better in the future. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to have some kind of workshop to flush out, to hear from, be in a more intimate setting where we can ask questions, obviously, within the same room to make sure we get it right. Because we can get it wrong, we can do a good thing and get it wrong, and it still turns out to be bad. And so we want to make sure we hit the right number. And, you know, that was our first impact fee that we passed in, I think it was 2017. But now, hopefully, our staff is better, council is better, because we know the pitfall questions to ask now. And I think we can flush that out when we get in the same room, because we just got this on Thursday. I want to look at what's being projected. Let's look at some student numbers. Let's look at different options that's within the language of the impact fee. And obviously we know once the impact fee starts, there's a time ticking, there's a clock ticking to use these funds. You just don't get to start an impact fee and wait infinitely to use those funds. So we got to make sure we get this right, so we're not coming up short on funds to deliver and cover growth, and we don't want to make sure we overreach, create an impact fee that, you know, obviously these costs are going to be passed on to homeowners, you know, and looking at some of the projected numbers of what the initial study has come in at, we don't know if these numbers are going to hold after we flush it out, because I think even with Clover's impact fee, it started at one number, ended at another number. And I think we did learn from, at the time, we didn't know what was going to happen with Fort Mill. But now with 2 impact fees under our belt, we'll be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't totally flush this thing out, hear from everybody involved, whether it's the people who are going to be on the hook to pay it, to the people going to be on the other end to receive it, because we are in this together. And when we have to go through any kind of litigation, it costs on both sides. It costs the county funds, it costs the schools funds, it costs taxpayers funds. And I tell people all the time, we don't make anything at York County. We spend your tax money, and I hate to see us spending money on lawsuits after lawsuits after lawsuits. For one time, I thought I was going to have to go back to law school to be on county council, because we had lawsuits everywhere. But luckily for us, we've done this twice now. Third time, we hope it's a charm and we get it right, absolutely right. So we definitely going to move forward with an impact fee. The big question is, where do these 3 numbers fall at? And I don't know if the general public heard these figures yet. It's $12,469 on a single family home. So for every new home built in York, that homeowner will eventually have to absorb $12,469. On a multifamily, obviously those are apartments, townhomes, $10,237. For a mobile home, $11,165. We also have to keep in mind affordability nowadays. One of the biggest crunches we have in this county, in this country right now, is being able to afford to live and have a decent lifestyle. We know housing costs are through the roof almost everywhere. Adding $11,000 to a mobile home cost, that's a significant increase for a mobile home buyer. Adding $12,469 is a significant cost. Obviously, we all know that if it's age restricted, 55 and up, those units won't pay an impact fee. So we have to keep a lot of things in mind. It's not just an easy show up here, see a number, and say, hey, you don't support the kids if you don't support an impact fee. We support the kids. We want to make sure we support everything along that way. And I assure you, this council is going to do everything it can to get it right this third time. Third time should be a charm for us and our staff to get it right. So we're going to, seems to be that this will move forward. We're going to have some discussion, but it's my plea for council and staff to get us in a workshop setting so we can ask these intricate details of what we're about to absorb. So that'll be my wish going forward.
I'll second that wish with, I think we need to do a workshop. I've got a lot of questions. And one of the things that just stands out to me in this is when you look at Councilman Winkler's area that he represents, I'm always a little jealous, unless it's campaign time, because I don't think anybody can physically cover that much area. Maybe they can, I don't know, but so one of the things that stands out to me is that in all of that unincorporated York County area, there are 213 homes permitted. Listen, in Lake Wiley, that's a fourth of a development. So I just have to question that number, and I know the city has approved a lot of homes, but 213 in all of that big area of Western York County, you know, you hate to think that you're gonna put an impact fee on somebody that's out in Sharon or Hickory Grove or Smyrna, when in fact, I mean, the 213 probably aren't even in that area. So that's of a concern. I've got some more concerns and questions, and so I think, I don't know how we make a workshop happen for this. I don't know how we make a workshop
Unfortunately,
happen for
I
this.
think Chairwoman Cox will have to do that, so
But I think
I will definitely
that's
pass the word
request.
along and ask
Yeah,
staff
so
to do
I'm
that as well.
obviously gonna support this tonight, and, just wanna get down to the nitty gritty in it, and, I think a workshop with the schools and probably with Tischler Vice representative is probably best.
All right, and I'll close up by saying again, you know, I think I support the school district's, right or ability to have an impact fee. I do. There are things about it I don't like. There's things about it I do like. One of my first things when the school district came to me and said they were looking at it was, you know, to echo some of what Councilmember Roddy said is, please, let's make sure we get it right this time, and the numbers are good and everything's done properly. To do that, you know, it's just one of those things that it's, I guess, a necessary evil until Councilmember Guffey gets to Columbia and straightens out the tax situation. No question. No question. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next, council to approve award regarding bid 2834 for the purchase of 2 unmanned aerial vehicles for use by the sheriff's office to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Skydio Incorporated of San Mateo, California, for a total cost of $36,086.82 as a part of the Coronavirus State and Local Physical Recovery Funds.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
I just want to say real quick, me and Trish had a conversation before we got started, and I called her over, I said, Trish, what is this? Is this one of those vehicles that's gonna be parked on the side of the road, that's a dummy vehicle that's just gonna be looking for speeders and making people slow down? She said, no, it's a drone. We're getting 2 drones. I was like, I hope nobody finds this out public. So I've been sitting here waiting to us to get to this part, but yeah, these are actually 2 drones that's gonna be purchased. So I shared my embarrassing moment with the public, so now I'm not so embarrassed, but I just had to share that interesting piece of information.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the sheriff's office gets some new drones. All right, committee and other reports.
The Economic Development Committee meeting met earlier this evening. It feels like it was a week ago, but it was earlier this evening at 5 o'clock. And present were Councilwoman Love as well as Councilman Audette. Our one action item was what we did hear from, I believe he's still here somewhere, Dean's right here. We heard from Dean Fail from the Chamber as well as Celeste Tiller to discuss the Chamber's workforce development initiative, and heard a lot about what they plan to accomplish over the next several years to ensure that York County's workforce is properly suited to meet the demands of the employers in the area. To that end, we voted unanimously to make a recommendation to council to use some of our economic development funds to help fund that initiative in the amount of $100,000 per year for the next 3 years, provided that they come back to council and report on their success on a regular basis throughout that time period. So I'm happy to share that. Other than that one action item, we did hear from David Swenson in executive session about updates on some projects.
Thank you. All right, council member, new non-agenda comments. We'll just start to my left since I'm looking this way, listening to Joel. working our way down the line, so.
I just want to say thank y'all. And congratulations to the people who are in the Blue Granite service area in Lake Wylie. You're now going to fall under York County for your water. It's going to take us maybe a little time to get all that timeline worked out, but it's been a long time coming. And I just want to say that this council has been very supportive. Management has been very supportive of this buyout, and it is one of the boxes that was probably one of the first boxes ever that I wanted to check off. And so I might not even sleep tonight. And if I had really been good, I'd have planned a little party. But
do that on third reading.
Thank you.
I'll take this opportunity to say, sitting up here, deciding some of the things that we have to work on and some of the things that we have to work through. Sometimes we can get a life lessons from just people that come before us that who have heartfelt passion about whether it's their neighborhood, whether it's in their city, their town, their rural area. Tonight we heard some great testimony by some people, and it just stuck in my head over and over. With so much going on, to hear the community come out, like I said, to support something. Usually we hear people come out and being against, but it was just a good meeting tonight. And don't think that we don't go home and evaluate ourselves day in and day out on a lot of these issues that we have to deal with. And so tonight, I just think we had a great meeting. Don't have any public announcement, but I did want to share that, because a lot of times we beat each other up here. We beat up people that come before us, and it doesn't always end well for whether it's us or people that's looking for rezoning or making a change to some kind of agenda item. So it was a good meeting tonight, and I hope everybody else got something out of what I was able to witness tonight from our citizens here in York County.
I only want to echo Councilwoman Love's comments and sentiments about the pending acquisition with Blue Granite. That's something that I've been on council for nearly 4 years, only have a couple months left. Everyone has to put up with me, I guess, but that's something that I wanted to see get done as well from the day I came into council, and I've been very anxious that, hopefully we can get through this before my time here is over. But I just want to thank staff for pushing through and putting up with some of my impatience and petulance in dealing with the process. And I'm glad to see that we're, have some concrete steps moving forward to go ahead and get that done.
Do you want to share some great news? And this was shared on a news release too, but Carowinds Boulevard for years is heavily used, and back in 2015, the existing council reached out to the infrastructure bank, Transportation Infrastructure Bank from within Columbia, and requested support in order to help facelift that exit, which is drastically needed. We found out about a month ago that we were granted the funds needed in order to move forward with this refacing and restructuring of the Carowinds Boulevard exit. So I want to thank all of our local legislators for working hard in Columbia to help get that funding, and Carowinds is going to get a facelift. So there we go. Good news.
All right. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm very hungry. I'm going to keep it very short. As we're going through, and we mentioned earlier about all the things that we walked through with the recode, I think everybody needs to really understand how much work we all put in on that. Public, just the amount of time and the amount of meetings, and then for it to just be one line item and kind of ran through.
That was more than one line I read there.
But it was one line item. But it was a long process. Disagreements and, amongst people in the community on how things should be done, and us having the discussions and actually coming together. I just can't state enough that's the way I believe government should work. Short term, or a couple other things that I'd like to get addressed, and we have discussed the short term rental. I don't think we ever did any voting or anything through zoning on that, so I would like to readdress it. And electronic billboards on 77. I thought that was one of the things that we had discussed, but I did not see on that list. So I'd like to put that back before zoning, so we can have something come out, whether for or against. And then the workshop for the review of impact fees, for sure. But other than that, that's it. I appreciate it.
I'll make sure that Chairwoman Cox knows that several of us want that workshop, so try and get that scheduled as soon as we can and get the school district representatives there. And to echo some of what was said, I told Councilmember Love, I can't remember how far back, that I hoped we would get Blue Granite done before I got off council, and I think we're gonna get it done. I'll keep fingers crossed here. We're getting close to the end of my time on council. You know, it's said several times tonight, but we don't say it enough. Thank you to staff. We put y'all through a lot, and we're not always, probably not always as nice to you or as complimentary as we could or should be sometimes. So thank you for what you do and for keeping us straight and feeding us all the stuff we ask for all the time, back and forth with all the information. And last thing I'll say is, I bet all of y'all hope that Christie doesn't miss another meeting, so. This one's taking a while. All right, we have no citizen concerns, so do we have motions for executive session?
We do, although if I recall, as I mentioned, it feels like it was a week ago. I believe there was a change to the agenda item. Is that correct, Michael, or do we need to go? Just the first one. Okay, well then, if that's the case, I move that we go into executive session for the receipt of legal advice, which is a request to authorize condemnation regarding project number 11149-004, tract 55, US 21 SC 51.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Let's try to get back in 5 minutes this time and get this thing wrapped up. We are out of executive session. No votes were taken in executive session. Do we have a motion?
We have a motion. That motion is to authorize condemnation regarding project number 11149-004, tract 55, US 21, SC 51, as we discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Do we have another motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're out of here.